I assume we're waiting on quorum.
Yes. If you want to give us a weird question.
So I can't even take credit for this one. I'll give credit to Corinne Hale, who I don't see here today, but um, part of she leads the North Coast System of Care, and her question in their meeting, the executive leadership meeting of that system of care this week was, what shape and color would your subconscious be or your aura? Shape and color. It's pretty deep.
That's really deep.
I know. I since I had some time to think about it, and it was a couple days ago. I will share mine, and then if others think about it and want to share, they can. But I think I settled on a teardrop shape because it's kind of like fluid, right? It's that like natural like shape of something. Um, and so it's kind of yeah, it's movable and going with the flow. And then the color that I settled on was like a deep kind of chocolatey amber. So not the real bright yellow amber, but like a deep kind of rich amber color. So like I say, I had some time to think about it. It's been a few days. But I did come up with that in the meeting in a couple of minutes. But my initial urge was much, much darker than that, if I'm just being
Hmm.
honest. I was like, just jet black. Like it's like my outfit every day. Black shirt all the time. But yeah, anybody else
Here
want
has a response to that, I think.
I got very excited at this question. I love questions like this. I would be a Motown purple hyperbolic paraboloid.
Ho ho! What is a hyperbolic paraboloid?
So everyone here's had Pringles before, right? The shape that a Pringle is a hyperbolic paraboloid.
And you would be a Motown purple Pringle.
A very soulful purple hyperbolic paraboloid.
Thanks for saving me to Google because yeah, I would have totally had to Google what it is. Thank you for
I
that.
love random shapes.
And we do have quorum if you would like to kick us off chairs, or we can wait and see who else rolls in. But last I counted, we had 15 people, 15 council members in the room.
I mean, I think while I pull up our agenda, let's give it a minute. Anybody else got a shape and color of your subconscious or your aura while I get myself together here? Nobody's going to be brave. Okay.
Definitely a squiggly line, just squiggly lines. And probably like a candy apple red.
Nice. Like it. Well, welcome, folks. If anybody else has thoughts, feel free to drop it in the chat, or maybe work it into a radioactive green inflatable pool from Jesus. That's awesome. Um, like that. Welcome. It's May. I won't do the Justin Timberlake joke, but it is officially May. Um, and let's start and just go over the objectives for the meeting. Then we'll do a roll call and talk about our group agreements as we always do. Can we pull up the slides?
Oh, are they not showing? Sorry.
I'm not seeing them.
Here you go.
There we go. All right. So we'll start and ground ourselves in an unexpected success shared by one of our council members. Um, we've got some continued discussion about strategic planning and have an exercise and a discussion about that. We've got subcommittee updates centering on lived experience. As always, we'll have public comment, discussion and possible vote on HERC consideration for alternative treatments, and HERC stands for
Health
Health
Evidence
Evidence
Review
Review
Committee.
Commission. Committee?
Commission.
Commission? Okay. I'm like working on that one. So yeah, so HERC, alternative treatments for behavioral health. And then, of course, got some housekeeping and updates, and I read them a little bit out of order there, but I got through all the bullets. So now let's do roll call and shared agreements. Over to you, Annette.
Greetings, everyone. Annette Magic Odemy, co-chair of the System of Care Advisory Council. Going to do our roll call. So I'll go in twos. So just holler out yay if you're here. Allison Stark and Sonia Little Deer Evans. Let's see either of them. Jackie Serrano and Sandra Santos.
Sandra's here. She put in the chat she had to take a phone call.
Okay. Robin Henderson and Anderson Du Bois.
This is Robin. I'm here.
Great. Anderson. Okay. Dr. Kyle Johnson and Adam Peterson.
Yeah, this is Kyle. I'm here.
Adam's here.
Judge Marissa Gates and Jesus Nunez Pineda.
Jesus here.
Judge Gates excused.
Okay. Kati Mosley and Emily Cooper.
Emily's here. I am here.
Great. Got both of you. All right. Dan Toma and Cindy Cecil.
Dan, yay.
Cindy. Okay. Ebony Clark and Carissa Cousins. Dr. Carissa Cousins.
Ebony's excused. And Dr. Cousins is here, but she's on a plane, so she may
Okay.
be not able to speak up.
All right. Zafir Michael Berry and Jill Archer.
Hello, hello.
Okay.
This is Jill.
Hey, Jill. April Flint Gerner and Dana Hiddle.
Dana Hiddle's here.
Great, thank you. Andrew Grover and Alicia Overstreet.
Alicia's here.
Wait, did I not unclick? I'm here too. Andrew's here.
Great, thank you. And Adam Rodakowski.
The other Adam is present as well. Yes.
Great, thank you. To start today's meeting, we'll review our shared agreements for this meeting, which is family and youth are welcome to participate in the meeting at any time. Members of the public who are not youth or family members can speak during the public comment period and freely contribute to the chat. You can send a private chat to Joylene Carter, Alicia Overstreet, or myself if you have a comment you want someone else to say for you. Our group agreements are be present and participate. Varied and opposing ideas are welcome. Challenge ideas, not people. Focus on our purpose for improving the system of care for Oregon. Practice respect. Avoid interrupting and use names and pronouns people introduce themselves with. Honor those with quieter voices. Lean in or lean back. Be mindful of the power dynamics in the room. Avoid acronyms. Use the chat to write definitions or ask for clarification. Avoid problem solving for individual situations or crisis, and propose solutions. Adam?
Yep, thank you. As always, we talk and at the beginning of the meeting, make sure we're reminding folks about the GARE tool, the Government Accountability for Racial Equity tool. We use this tool to ensure we're considering all racial disproportionality as we make decisions. We have to take a look at the following questions every time we're making a decision on policy, program, or budget. Those questions, they're on the slide. What are the racial equity impacts of this decision? Who will benefit from or be burdened by this decision? Are there strategies to mitigate any unintended consequences? And is completion of the full racial equity worksheet warranted? The tool is always living. Sometimes we are using the tool multiple times on a specific issue, which is happening actually tomorrow. But yeah, it's very important that we call each other in and ask these questions when we need to make sure that we're not moving through too quickly and not considering impacts that may occur.
And I just want to add there, Adam, that if you think that completion of the racial equity worksheet is warranted, but you're not comfortable being the one to sort of unmute and call that out, you can also chat that to any of our council members. Joylene, Annette, as chair of our DEI committee, they're happy to sort of speak that request into the meeting, and it's entirely valid if it feels like that's a safer way for you to call that out.
Thank you, Anna. And yeah, just to call out the chat, if folks are driving or don't have access to the chat, Kyle Johnson asked if we've received nominations for the open council member seat. And Anna responded, we have received one. The membership committee has decided to wait until we had options and more to consider. The council staff, I know, has done lots of outreach, but we have not received any other applications from folks to fill that seat. So just wanted to make sure we read that out.
Thank you.
And that is for county mental health director. So they can be a program director within a county mental health department or the director of their county mental health department itself.
Yeah, this is Kyle. Is there a timeline for, it's like we have one nomination, but we're waiting? How long will we wait? Yes.
The committee did not set a timeline.
Yeah, I don't know that we set that. It's a good question. Yeah, it's an important seat to have engaged. Robin.
I know that we have talked about a variety of different people reaching out to AOCMHP. This is a really, really important seat for AOCMHP. And somehow I think they're not hearing that we really need somebody to do this. Should we take another run at having a conversation with Cheryl? AOCMHP is the Association of Oregon Community Mental Health Programs. Thank you, Anna. Should we take another run at having a conversation with Cheryl? I mean, if they're not going to prioritize having representation in this space, that's a little scary.
I suppose we should. Yes. Yeah, Jill agrees there in the chat. I believe, yeah, we've tried a couple of times directly. Would we be, well, I guess, do we want to send an email and request essentially to be put on their agenda for their next meeting to go and kind of plead our case for their involvement and engagement?
That's a great idea. I will happily, why don't I send, Mary Rumboss, the co-chair? Jill, maybe you and I should send an email to Mary and ask to get on their next agenda.
I think that is a great idea. And maybe include Anna on that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute. Yes, I think that would be great. And I think there are some really qualified people that would be great candidates. So happy to do that.
And then I think, Kyle, to kind of your point about how long we would wait, I think if we get on their next meeting, which I imagine is, since its legislative session is happening fairly frequently, and we give them a little bit of time, perhaps at our next exec meeting, we make a decision to just move forward, because it has been open for quite some time. That was Amy Baker's seat, I believe. So.
Right. Thank you so much. Andrew Grover, Director of Youth Villages, is going to share a success his agency has had and how it's connected to the work of the council. He's going to lead us in a grounding in an unexpected success exercise. So Andrew, take it away.
All right, thank you. First of all, I just want to say I was asked to do this and I'm excited to do it, but I'm not here to sort of like promote what we're doing. I always feel a little bit uncomfortable with self-promotion, but I think it is relevant to the work that we do. And because at this level, system of care, statewide, all the things, it's sometimes difficult to know when you do this, what happens after this, sort of what happens down the road, when we make a decision or a recommendation or something like that. And by nature, it's pretty abstract, the work that we do. I know it's very personal for many of us, and it's also, we all have a passion, but there is a level of abstraction at this level of work. So Youth Villages has a program called Intercept. And Intercept is an intensive in-home family-focused support program, right? So we send counselors, highly trained, very, lots of oversight and support, to families' homes, and work with them to help, learn skills, identify barriers, overcome challenges, all of that sort of thing. It's very intensive in the sense that we work with families face to face at least 3 times a week in their home, sometimes in schools, sometimes in other locations, depending on what's going on. But there's always a home-based element to it. We're available 24 hours a day, including in-person response. And this is maybe starting to sound a little bit like what we all know as IIBHT, which is very similar to what Intercept does. So the program that we operate, Intercept, has been demonstrated highly effective over many years, including, research through the Chapin Hall School at the University of Chicago and a third-party researcher. We've got all kinds of kind of support for the kind of efficacy of this program. And we work very closely with our partners at the state, both the Health Authority and CCOs, also very closely with child welfare when we can. But so one thing to know is that this is a pretty well-established program in lots of states across the country. We literally provide this program in 19 states. As we're sitting here, we're working with over 4,000 families across those 19 states. But in Oregon, it has been a pretty slowly adopted kind of a program. We started in 2011. And for a while, it was all through, CCO contracts. We got, we were just praying to get 10 kids and families in the program. And then we got to 20, and then we got to 30. And then it started kind of picking up a little bit from there. But then it sort of hit a kind of a lull right around when we started working with 70 families on any given day. We provide these services in 3 regions of the state right now: Portland Metro, the Central Oregon area, we have a Bend office, and then in the kind of Willamette Valley, we have a Salem office. And so what happened was, as many people were saying, we need more, intensive in-home services. The health authority saw that need too, and basically pressed forward with this IIBHT program, intensive in-home. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Joylene. Behavioral health program, treatment. And from that point, what we really did as a state was created a new level of care, right? An in-home service as an actual level of care that's defined. Prior to that, we had regular outpatient, where you go to see a therapist in an office, maybe frequently, but still you go to them. And we had inpatient, where a kiddo is placed into some sort of a facility. And the IIBHT rules basically created a new level of care, and in that way, it created a common language for people. And that sounds kind of like, well, sort of, so what? But what happened then was we started to see a lot more interest and discussion in in-home services in the behavioral health system in general. And the CCOs started to get very interested and very more, much more motivated, I think, at that point to support these kinds of programs. So going back to 2022, I know that IIBHT started existing kind of in the middle of the pandemic, like in the 2020 kind of time frame. That was a very difficult time to ramp up an intensive in-home service when you have a respiratory virus that people are worried about, terrible outcomes from. So for those first couple years, it was a little difficult, and you could understand why. But from 2022 to today, we were working with 75 families. Now as of today, we're working with 180 families across those three regions. We're growing incredibly fast. There is a definite need, and we see it all the time because we get calls. Last week alone, we got 30 referrals for this program. That was actually just in the Portland metro area. We've got, I think, 90 families right now, like referred to us, that we're trying to work to get into the program. And so we're growing as fast as we can. But the point in all of this is that my view of it is that doesn't happen, even though Intercept itself, it didn't until recently comply with all of the IIBHT rules in intensive in-home behavioral health treatment. It didn't comply with all the rules. There was some rigidity in the rules that made it so that our program, which is evidence-based and really effective, it didn't comply with the IIBHT rules. So the CCOs, they all basically said, we're going to put Intercept in our contracts and IIBHT. And when a family tells you that they don't want 4 hours of in-home services, you can use your program that isn't, it basically requires 3 sessions. So we've had these two things, and our program just really grew much more quickly. We were able to get reimbursement rates. The two CCOs that stepped up most strongly were the Care Oregon Health Share group and Pacific Source, but certainly there were several others that kind of on a smaller scale expressed interest and really wanted to make it grow. So we're going to be working with something. I think we're going to get to 200 families by the end of June, and that's at any given time, right? And then by the end of next year, we've got a stretch goal of reaching at least 300 families at any given time. And the families are there. They're calling us. We've been reaching out to lots of different partners in schools and pediatric clinics and obviously wraparound teams and all of that. And the kind of the referrals and the need is very clearly demonstrated. But all of that to say, if you look at the IIBHT reports, it won't say that there are hundreds and hundreds of kids in the program. But that's in part because of a technicality. The rules were too rigid. So people that were doing some important work weren't able to call it IIBHT. The rules have since been changed to be, I think, a little bit more friendly to families and providers. But again, I don't think that the growth that we've seen happens if the IIBHT level of care didn't exist. And so, again, if you're looking at the reports, you won't notice that, but this is happening. So one last example I'll give. We're right now working with the Columbia Pacific CCO to evaluate whether or not we can get a sustainable team on the ground in Tillamook and then also Lincoln County. So that would be IHN. So those two counties together. As I've been out there over the past several months talking to people, we share a common language now. People know about in-home services. They have an understanding of what it is and what the opportunity is, and they want to see more of it. Prior to that, I would have spent a lot of my time talking about why outpatient isn't enough. Why office-based outpatient isn't enough for some, or the right fit for some families. It's great for some people, but it's not right for everybody. So yeah, I guess that's probably should probably leave it there for now. But again, just thinking about it in the sense that you don't always know what's going to happen as a result of a policy decision that gets made. And sometimes you don't even know, even if you measure it, in a super direct way, which is obviously frustrating to a person like me. But yeah, I guess I should say one other thing. When I say that these services are effective, and I'm speaking for our program, we follow families for a year after they discharge. And we want to know, are you still living safely and together? Are you going to school, and are you staying out of trouble with the law? And we're seeing well over 80 and in many cases 90% of the families that we work with are successful a year later by those measures. And we really believe in this level of care and are going to continue to try to reach as many as we can. So.
Got a question in the chat, Andrew, from Carol.
Oh, yeah.
What are the criteria for access? Level of care, expectation, crisis? What's
Yeah.
up?
So really so right now our program is funded through the Oregon Health Plan, right? So you pretty much, you would have to be on the Oregon Health Plan, enrolled in a CCO or even on an open card. So that is a barrier for some families. But assuming that's not a barrier, all we really need to do is to be able to demonstrate that that the youth, and we work with the whole family, but the child is the identified sort of client, as it were. The youth has something, that qualifies them for services, which would mean some kind of a diagnosis. But with I'm going to give you another acronym that everybody's going to have to furiously Google, but it's EPSDT, and don't even early and periodic screening. It's a whole thing. It's a nationally known kind of a thing, but our Medicaid waiver now says that any diagnosis can qualify you for services under Medicaid if you're a child. Where it used to be, you had to have an above the line diagnosis. So I don't want to get too technical. Oregon has this sort of above the line, below the line concept, but for children, that no longer applies. And so really kind of, you might have a parent-child relational problem. That is a qualifying diagnosis where it didn't used to be. It used to be, things like, it would have to be post-traumatic stress disorder or something like this. So those are a couple of things. It doesn't have to be a crisis. Families call us with some frequency trying to kind of ask if we can help. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a referral through anyone. We get calls from school guidance counselors. We get calls from pediatric clinics, all the things. And we're going to continue to work to, build a partnership around this program with our child welfare partners, because there's a lot of opportunity there to, prevent placements and to reunify more quickly. So I don't know if I answered your question real well, Carol, but I tried.
You did. Thank you. I love this. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Yeah. And again, I wasn't really doing this as a self-promotion. This is really about, like, as a council, we can't always know the impacts that we're making. And IIBHT is just one thing. Like, I look at those reports and it frustrates me to see low numbers. but this is, something else that's going on. I know of other providers that are serving lots of families with intensive in-home services, but they couldn't call it IIBHT because the rules were a little too rigid. And that has been addressed. The health authority heard that, did work groups. It has been addressed effective March 1st. So we'll, I think, see those numbers go up.
Thank you, Andrew, for that presentation. It really hit home for me that families really need support where they are. And I especially love the follow-up. That's so important for families to know that, or for the deliverer of the service to know that families are still using what the information they were provided with. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Adam.
This is the drawing and art portion of the meeting, so get ready. It's kind of throwback to when I was getting my master's in social work. I feel like we had a lot of art projects. I don't know if any of you other MSWs had that experience, but I was like, huh, I'm not an artist at all, but like we're painting again. Today, to lead us, we have our good friend and colleague Addie Smith, who's our strategic planning consultant, doing some vision exercises. So, Addie.
Hello. I was just thinking to myself, I also used a lot of art supplies during my MSW program, and there's only one rule today. I'm going to try and get ahead of everyone. No one's allowed to say you're not an artist. So you'll know I've done this before because that becomes a constant refrain. Everybody's art today is going to be good enough, and it's going to be exactly what it needs to be. So what we're going to do today is exactly that, a little bit of visioning and thinking together using the other side of our brain that we don't usually use at meetings like this, and sort of setting a lot of us out of our comfort zones a little bit on purpose to think about things differently. And then we'll wrap up with just a tiny report back from our last meeting when we had those really delightful goals, or I'm sorry, vision conversations where we reset some of the visions for our strategic planning. So that's the agenda. The lined paper, scratch paper, I just have a standard sheet of printer paper. If you have a canvas and paint supplies to the left of you, more power to you. I'm excited to see what you come up with. But we're going to start, if you do have a piece of paper, by folding it hamburger, not hot dog. So just a little demo, hamburger, not hot dog is, sort of folding it along the long side. You can hear my camp counselor and, impatient res days coming out just a little bit, so that we've got two sides. And then you're going to open it back up. You're going to put it on your table. And on the left side, we're going to start with this. And there's going to be just a little bit of quiet time in our heads. On the left side, I want you to draw. Again, everyone's an artist today. There's no wrong way to do this. Your take on what our current children's mental health system is right now here in Oregon, right? And the only rule is, and I think Alicia's probably going to, give me some words, but no words on this. So it has to be a visual representation. I'm only calling her out because I know she did this activity and splattered some words, or at least minimal words. So try and really visually depict, I'll compromise there, visually depict what you think our current sort of mental health system of care for young people, for children in Oregon looks like to you. And we are going to pause, and I'm going to give people about 8 to 10 minutes on this drawing. So let's just take our time with that. It can be, with a blue pen on plain white paper, or if you've got your glitter pencils next to you, by all means, bring your crayons and glitter pencils and all of that into it. But we'll take about 8 minutes, and then we'll do some sharing out about what we've drawn. So no wrong answers, not too many words. Everyone's an artist.
Addie, can you put the specifics of what we're drawing in the chat in case anyone missed it?
Yes, great idea. Thanks for that suggestion, Cody. I really appreciate it. Really should have thought about having some background music for this portion of the meeting.
Never too late, Abby. Never too late.
Let's see what I can come up with. Is that coming through? Can you guys hear the music?
Kinda.
I'll keep working on it.
Coming through a little robotic, Addy.
Yes.
We're getting some beeps and boops.
Shoot, I was trying to play the Bridgerton soundtrack because it's those classical takes on current sort of hip hop. I thought that might be a nice background. I'll work on it. We'll keep it as a work in progress. Next time I'll be more prepared. Thanks for the feedback, Cody.
No, you could have given me 80 guesses, and I don't think I could have gotten it. I like the idea.
The cancellation is so good, right? That's the problem. It's like sometimes my dog will be barking incessantly in the background and nobody can hear him, but I cannot focus because of the noise. So, yeah.
Next time, it gives me a new skill to learn, create some new synapses. We'll take about 3 more minutes on our drawings. And I just want to echo the commentary in the chat. I appreciate those who are stretching a little bit today. I know this doesn't come naturally to everyone, so thanks for your effort.
My least favorite thing, drawing hands. Why did I do this?
Just 1 more minute, although we're gonna have a second round, so prepare yourself. Last minute to wrap up your excellence. Finish the shading in the background, make sure you've got the perspective just right. Okay, I'm gonna bring us back in. And for those of you who it helps to sort of doodle, etc., while you listen, by all means, don't feel like you can't continue. On this one, since it's sort of the current state, we're gonna popcorn. So just a few people who are willing to share a little bit about their drawing. So, sort of in the old way we learned from COVID, holding it up, showing it, and then explaining it. So I'm hoping we can find 5 or 6 volunteers who'd like to talk us through. Remember, everyone's an artist. There's no bad drawings on this. Oh, I love this. Okay, great. We'll start with Emily, whose hand, we'll just go right in order. 5, and we'll take one more if there's one more person who's excited to share their work.
Okay, so I did a pretty cloudy sky, pretty dark clouds, pretty hopeless, lots of rain, but there's a little rainbow peeking through. And Andrew, having gone to your event last week, there's rain coming down and there are seeds in the ground that are starting to sprout. And so there's some really good ideas out there and some really good people doing it and a lot of sadness. This is my description.
Great. Emily, thanks so much for sharing and for kicking us off, especially as an attorney. Bonus points for being willing to get in on the art side of things. All right.
I have a 5-year-old and crayons that are funny, so.
I noticed the vibrant colors, so I appreciate the crayons you had access to. All right. Zephyr, by all means, please share.
Hello, sorry. It gave me a weird prompt and I was like, I don't know what that means. So I drew it on my phone because I have paper, but it's for other uses. This is what I drew.
I love
There's a
this.
guy and says, "What do I do?" And then there's like hands and eyes surrounding him in a dark room. That is what I drew.
Got it. And can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you, if you're open to it?
For me, especially someone who's dealt with my own fair share of mental health struggles, for me personally, it's very hard to not only to be willing to seek out help for yourself, but also to have to go through therapist after therapist, trying to find the right one, figuring out can you afford one? Will your insurance cover one? Finding one that is covered that you don't like, or one that's expensive that you do. And kind of at the end of it being like, well, what do I do?
Thank you so much for that awesome artwork and also that great description of it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Adam?
All right. I did it wrong already.
There's
I know
no
that
wrong.
I did it. I folded it hot dog way.
Oh,
you
well,
said
there
to
is
fold it
that.
hamburger. Oh no, and the blur is. Oh no, the blur is not working. Hold on.
If you're
Let's see.
if you're willing to unblur your background for just a second,
Oh,
it might.
boy. All right.
But only if you're comfortable.
Show us your bookshelf.
I can try. How do I do that?
Take your time. It's going to be over with the little up caret next to the video.
Okay.
You'll uncheck the checkbox next to blur my background if you're able to find that.
Okay. Well, now I'm sideways. How did I get sideways? Now I'm upside. Okay.
One more.
Oh boy.
It's all right. We're all learning together. We're all here to support.
Okay.
Oh,
There we go.
Look at that.
So
Great.
mine is it's different levels and different silos.
Yes.
There are bridges between them, but the people don't necessarily know how to get to the bridges. And you can see there is a human who is trying to go from one to the other, but stumbling to do so because they're unsure of that. They didn't know the bridge was there or how to access it. And then they end up lower than they should be. And then there's another bridge that's just straight broken because there's not great connections between the different levels and different silos.
I love this. First of all, this level of stick art is exactly where my artistic ability lies. So this really speaks to me personally, but I really like the symbolism that you have included in here. The silos, the bridges, the space between, the worry about being able to get across or falling through. I think there's a lot there that we've heard come up at these meetings before, and I think that's such a great way to visualize it. So in spite of it being hot dog, not hamburger, I really appreciate that illustration. Thanks, Adam. Alicia?
Oh, is it me already?
It is. Is that okay?
Okay, yes, that's fine. And this time geez Louise, why is it doing that?
It's okay. It's pretty. I can see there are not a lot of words.
There aren't a lot of words, and I don't know why. It won't let me undo my camera.
You can always walk us through it.
Anyway, so I can try. Oh, wait, can you see?
Oh yeah, I can get the gist. Yeah.
See somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
No, my goodness. Okay, anyway, so I have there are boxes. Okay. Two red boxes.
I see that.
And the boxes represent the system. The little stick figures, the gray ones, represent the families.
Oh, this is a great view for us, by the way. We can see really well.
Okay, good. Represent the families. And then the little circles represent services that people can access. There is one little red dot right here, I think, right there, that is opening a door, and that's the gatekeeper system. And then up here, we have more services, but those are not available in the state of Oregon. So the gist is that basically there are certain levels of the system where the system basically allows certain people to receive services, and then certain other families to receive more services, or certain other services or more appropriate services, I guess, and supports. But there's a gatekeeper that, whatever that gatekeeper might be, that could be anything from bureaucracy, red tape, to the legislature, not enough funding, right? All those different things. And so, yeah, and then you have families out in the wild trying to figure out how to get into that system that is not allowing them in, or that's making it more difficult. And then, of course, like I said, there are services that families might want to access, but they're not available within the state.
I love that. I especially like the sort of separate box of things that no one can access even if they want to, because it's another state, another location. Thanks for that. And thanks for accepting the challenge of not words. Always opportunities to grow together.
I'm so proud of myself.
I'm proud of you too. All right, Cody.
Hello, I volunteered so that we can hopefully get an example of someone who does not think of themselves as an artist and also had to use Microsoft Paint. So this is what we have.
Wow.
And I got about halfway through drawing as many different systems as I could, but I tried to depict kind of like families along with, well, this is supposed to be a school. And
are you trying to share something, Cody? Because it's not coming through.
Well, I was.
Let's see if we can't help.
Oh, it helps if I actually hit the share button.
There you go.
There we go.
So much technology.
That's
I'm
better.
very impressed with this group.
So I got about halfway through trying to draw different systems, and the goal here was to kind of depict like families at school, and like medical systems trying to lift up the kid and help them, but not being very successful at it yet. but it took me a little bit longer to draw than I thought, and so there's a couple other people that are helping, but they're not drawn yet. So I'll keep it short.
Great. A whole new medium. April, I know your hand was up and then down. We have a little time if you want to share, but I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to share.
Oh no, I don't never have a problem sharing. I just wanted to be respectful of the people with lived expertise here. So make me last if there's still time.
Okay. I think on this one, it's you and Anderson, unless anyone else wants to raise their hand and step forward first, and then.
All right, I'll just go then since I'm off.
Okay.
So I couldn't find all my pretty markers quick enough, and you're not going to be able to see it. It's just too dark. But I mean, it's just too light. But I've got a young person who's filled with worry and trauma and stress and ears. And the messages that are coming from this system are the adults aren't listening to me or centering me. Bureaucracy is more important than who I am. I'm broken, not the systems that are supposed to be helping me. My family is giving up on me and people are scared to serve me. And then around that, in much smaller print, there are little people and little hearts and little money and all the things that are around saying, we care about you, but they're so fragmented around this person who's hurting that it's not working, that we are showing this person that we're centering them and what they need.
Lovely. Thank you for that, and for that artistic use of words that really built on the image and those thoughts. Anderson, are you open to sharing yours as our last share? I saw you pop on and then pop off also, and it's okay if
Sure.
it's okay.
Yeah, it was mainly around hoping that we had enough time and wanting to create space for others. Yeah, so I kind of did two sort of interconnected images. Starting here, I feel like our system is really focuses on the individual versus community. But the way it's set up is resources feel like they're daisy chained together. And so if you're able to find those resources in the first place, it's kind of like a mind web of each. This is the person trying to access the resources. Each circle is a resource. And like, even to get to some of them, they've been crossed out. Because either the person's not trusted or the resource doesn't exist anymore. And even further out, there are more resources in. And so this is sort of the arrow to like what it looks like in getting there. And sometimes perhaps it's hard to even find out where to even start or how to get into there. And then it's a maze once you do. There is a way out. Some folks know how to navigate it and some folks don't know what it looks like. And so it's kind of those two pieces put in together with what I've seen youth and even myself navigate through the system.
Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate everyone's willingness. I'm gonna give us a quick recap. These are some of the themes I heard, and I'm open to others throwing in the chat if I miss it. But I'm hearing a lot about barriers and lack of access, right? That was sort of across everyone's, and we saw that sometimes in the shape of clouds, sometimes in the shape of gaps. We had silos, boxes, mazes, right? So a whole lot of difficult to navigate landscapes that our young people are sort of being forced to navigate. And the other thing I heard as a theme throughout is that the system's really putting things on our young people, on our children. And instead of showing up to help them and meet them where they're at, it's actually compounding some of the difficulties that they're feeling because the system is so difficult in and of itself. And so the last thing I think I heard sort of across the drawings is everything is really feeling like it's starting with the children and their families. Absolutely. Exactly. Thanks, Anna, for that correction. I appreciate it. And it feels like a lot of things right now are starting with the system, not with the child and the family, right? So instead of being child and family centric and working out, it's what works for the system, and then how can we get our children and families into that system. So those were some of the themes I heard in this conversation. So now we're gonna turn to the other side, the clean side of our paper, the blank side of our paper, and you can guess what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the same thing, but it's what do we think the system should, and I'll definitely type this in, but what do we think the system should like? look like? What should children's mental health care in Oregon look like? How do we want the system to be? So I'm going to give us another sort of, 8 to 10 minutes to get a drawing there. Adam, I see some questions.
Yeah, my question is, are we talking about the behavioral health system or the system of care? Because I feel like those are two very different things that we're talking about.
I am gonna leave that, unless others have strong objection, up to the interpretation of the individual drawing. So whichever you want me to hear about, whichever you think it's most important to talk about, that's what I'm gonna ask people share and draw about and describe to me as we do some sharing out. Does that feel okay to you, Adam?
It does, but I guess I don't understand I want to make sure I'm understanding the assignment though, because the like we are this system of care, like representing all the different systems, and I don't.
Then you should do yours on the system of care.
Okay, sounds good. Will do.
Perfect. And I won't try and give us music since that flopped last time, but just hum to yourself in your head one of your favorite songs, because you definitely don't want me singing that, I can promise. We're about halfway through. About 2 more minutes for those who want to wrap up.
I just need another 65 minutes.
I like that dedication. Okay, I'm going to bring us back together. Certainly, if people want to keep sort of doodling as they listen or creating their masterpiece as they listen, that is always welcomed. We have the rest of the hour, so like 27 minutes to share out on this. So I'd love to just use as much of that time to get anyone who's open to sharing the opportunity to report out on what their vision or hope for the future is. If people are open to it, the raising hands worked pretty well, and we can kind of go in order as we share out. So is there anyone who's really excited to kick us off? All right. Thanks, Anna. If you want to go ahead and share your art and tell us a little bit about what your vision is, that would be great.
So this is my drawing. I'm obviously an excellent artist. And this system of care is sort of envisioned as like a watering hole where like you kind of everything kind of runs downhill to it. It's kind of like easy, you know, when you're like hiking and you find that like cooler spot and it's so like fresh and refreshing and you just kind of your legs go a little faster as you get there. And then there's like things that are supportive and renewing, like trees and rocks that you can rest on. There are other things getting their needs met in the same space, and there are connections between people who are the same over here, these little purple people, and people who are different, these little differently colored people, and there are little dotted lines between them showing that they are sharing things and getting things from this resource here at the center that are sustaining for them.
Love it. Sounds like there's no wrong doors. You can get there from any different direction, and then there's something there for everyone that really meets their needs. Great. All right, Katie. And I want to give a shout out to whoever's doing the tech so that we're centering the person sharing. I really appreciate that. And I am in awe of your skills. So thank you to whoever that person is.
So my name's Kati.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
Kati. I think mine is, you can't tell by how so. Mine is best maybe understood in the context of what I drew for the current system. So I'll probably explain a little bit of that. Can you see it? So yep. I tried to put the child and the family in the center. And then around them is some kind of person who's holding them and is doing the effort of pulling the resources towards them. So they have big arms that are strong and that are flexing to bring the needed resources in for that family so the parent can focus on just being with their child and doing all the other things that make life go. And then all of the discoordinated resources that are available are pushing in instead of having to also be pulled in. They're pushing in to be available, whether it's school or DD services or mental health supports or substance use or behavioral supports or any of the things. They're pushing in while the case person or the other adult is pulling in. And they're also all talking to each other. That's what the connecting line is supposed to be, that there's smooth communication. So the child really has one coherent plan, not 11 plans that a family member or a parent, a primary parent has to try to make coherent. And so that was sort of my vision of what I would love to see in the future.
I love that, Kati. I really like the pushing and pulling. So the tension that's there that creates a supportive foreground for the young person and their family. And it makes perfect sense that one of your drawings would build off the other, right? Because we're all thinking about what's happening now and what we like and don't like and what we want to carry forward in that. So I really appreciate that and appreciate you sharing. Marissa?
Hi, gang. Marissa here. So thank you. This has been I don't know. I don't want to say fun. It's been enjoyable
Good.
in a way. Okay,
I think it can be
so
really nice to step into a different part of our brain and think about things differently. And that does not come naturally to me at all. So,
right, and in the snack in the middle of a workday,
right.
it's
Yeah.
great. So I was thinking here, I'll show my little guy here. I was thinking of this like, ooh, there we go. I didn't think that my blur was that blurry, but okay, so it's like a little map. There we go. It starts with a little guy has a problem and he's happy because an adult is like, oh, here, tell me about it. Do you need this? Do you need that? And his little report has like checks next to some things that he needs. And the adult goes, oh, let's get you up here with these other adults who can help you with that. And then, oh, the services were very helpful. And so he's happy. But, these things are cyclical and life is lifey and things don't just like stick great forever after one intervention. So he gets a little upset again and he goes back to the same person and gets another opportunity to share what he thinks he needs and gets another idea to go to a totally different thing. And this time goes up here, the door's open, you can't really tell, but there's a little door open, goes in there, gets what he needs, and then leaves, and down here is happy again. And then if need be, the cycle can start again. So I was mostly thinking of it like finding when you like the no wrong door thing, the door is usually a person. So it's like no wrong person, and then having that person be your person that you can go back to and reconnect with if things get out of whack again. And then the other element of it was there was never any like, oh, sorry, the door is shut, that we don't have a room, there's not space, we don't have a seat, we don't have a bed, we don't have a chair, we don't have a this, we don't have a, none of that was in the way. So it kind of implied that there was capacity at each step along the way.
Yeah, so I'm hearing both capacity and sort of what I like is your dotted connections, right? Like there's a clear path, but also the young person and the family have someone help them, guide them through the path so they're not lost. And I really noticed something you said, which is coming back to the same person. So being able to work with some consistency and some knowledge of the people and who have sort of served that young person and family well and remaining in contact. I think the other thing you said that I really liked is because life got lifey, and I totally feel that on a lot of days. So I appreciate that reminder. Anyone else? I want folks to know, even if you shared the first time, you're welcome to share. All right, Zephyr, perfect. Jump right in, please.
Okay, so this does not look good at all. I don't know how proportions work, man. So I drew, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's on a white background. So I drew this. So you got the guy from the last time. He no longer exists because I accidentally deleted the layer. But now he is being like guided into the resources and the life that he wants to live. He's not necessarily being handheld. He's just kind of like he's been given the resources and the options to like have his own agency, and he's about to like jump into it. That's supposed to be like a rope, Indiana Jones style, and he's about to jump into it, but there's still like a safety net just in case it doesn't work out, because like I forget who just said it, like sometimes it doesn't immediately go well the first time, but now they're confident enough to I can see the chat. They're confident enough to take that step for themselves without like the burden of not knowing if they'll come out of it unscathed.
Zephyr, thank you so much. No one's going to want to go next because that art was so good. So I just want everyone to know we can't all be as talented as Zephyr, and your drawing is also worth sharing, even if it isn't quite as amazing. And I appreciate the correction on the pronunciation. Sorry about that. So appreciate that. With that, knowing how, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if life doesn't work out for you to be a voice actor, Zephyr, you can become a cartoon artist instead.
I just started drawing again after years of not, and it's the thing is thangin'. That thing is thangin' right now.
Yes, that is some real talent. I really appreciate that. And I just want to know what I loved about what you were saying is the agency of the young person with the safety net, right? Like I think that is really something that we all hope for young people in our lives is opportunities to take risks, figure things out, have agency, make mistakes knowing there's a safety net there and there's opportunities for those developmental milestones and growth to keep happening. So I really appreciate that. And I noticed same thing as you're saying, sort of that cyclical nature, the relapse of things, the understanding that these aren't straight paths forward. So thanks both for that wonderful art, for that beautiful symbolism also. Please don't delete that one if at all possible. Save it now. Robin, jump right in.
So I'm gonna give everybody else permission to share after me because my art is very unique. So here we go. You have to see the
Oh, you have to turn your background off.
You might have to
my
turn your
gosh.
background off if you're open to it.
Okay, let me see if I can turn my background off.
We promise not to judge.
We're getting your superhero Providence experience.
That is the sweetest thing I've ever seen.
Okay, there we go.
Right.
How do I make that go away? There we go. Okay, so you have to see the before picture. See the before picture? This is the convoluted system, and there's all the wrong doors and the question marks, and people don't know where to go. And then this is your after picture right here. You have a heart with hugs in it. So now you've seen, yes, the heart with hugs in it, and acceptance and love, and having a children's system that's filled with unconditional acceptance and love will be absolutely awesome and amazing. So there you go. Now you have seen the most terrible art. And anybody else can share from now on.
No,
Don't say that.
There's no rules because your message was very clear, and I have to admit your big reveal was very impressive. I saw lots of people smile as you turned it because the heart with the hands is such a universal symbol. People understood exactly what you were trying to talk about. So don't be so hard on yourself. And I think it's a really great message, right? A lot of our conversation today has been really system focused, and it's really nice to remember that unconditional acceptance and love should be at the center of things just as much as sort of all the technicalities and all of the processes and all of that stuff. If we want to do this right, we have to remember we are humans working with other humans, and that acceptance and love becomes really important to a system that works. The lack of opposable thumbs. I'm just looking at this. All right, Jill, thanks for stepping up. Please share.
Only because mine probably is the same genre as Robin's, but I tried to bigger. I couldn't do it. So it's a very small puzzle.
Yeah.
4 pieces, but it's basically like all of the systems knitted together and there's no missing pieces and everything connects. So it's like housing and like treatment and school and like child welfare / carceral, but everything sort of fits together.
Got it. Great. So more of that connectedness, and I like how you visualized it with those puzzle pieces. So really everything fits together to work together kind of seamlessly, which is really nice. I think we have time for about 2 more. Do we have 2 more brave souls willing to share their talent with this group? I'm gonna wait just 1 more minute to see if anyone wants to jump in. No wrong answers. Everyone's an artist.
We should start picking on people like it's high school. It's like, you're gonna go.
I love that. All right, April, thanks for volunteering.
Well, I wanted to redeem myself after I didn't follow direction and have all those words on my paper. So my person has experienced something a little bit different. Oh my gosh, it's too hard to see, isn't it?
Figure it out. Oh, there we go. I appreciate
There's like this, person in the middle that has choices and options, and there's a connected heart around them with lots of people and lots of resources. And there's actually a safety net under there too, if you can see, so that when there is a need, crisis doesn't have to happen.
Love it. So avoiding the crises, something we've talked about in this room a couple times before, which is how do we get to a place where it's more prevention oriented, less crisis intervention oriented. So I love how you visualize that. Makes a lot of sense to me. One last one. Anyone want to close us out? Wrap us up? No pressure. Okay, so a couple things as we move to the end of our hour together. What I heard on our future system, and again, jump in the chat if I'm missing things or you know, didn't catch all of it, but we saw a lot of art that centered the child and family, started with the child and family, really different than our current system art. We saw a lot of pieces where there was sort of something for everyone, or everyone had a place in the system, and there was no wrong door, no bad access point. Or I loved the conversation around it's probably not a door, it's a person. So people in the system were really set up to serve our young people and our families, and then also bring them into the system. And there was a really nice conversation about sort of how are folks, once they're in the system, guided versus how much agency and self-guided there is in that system, which I think makes a lot of sense, that there's some tension there that we want to balance correctly. Obviously, the themes of safety net came up a couple times, and then the big themes around circles, connections, interconnections, puzzles, right? Like everything's woven together, and it's not our young person, our child, our family that's doing the weaving. The weaving has sort of been done for us. So there's that seamlessness. And then we saw quite a few hearts. So that unconditional acceptance, that love. And then I think the last thing I heard some of that was really important is choices and options, right? So it's not just that there's sort of no wrong in route, wrong person. It's once you're there, you're not stuck with whatever's available. And there's not that issue of capacity where beds are, but there are a variety of options to meet the needs of folks. And those options have some capacity. So I think those are the themes I heard. Anna, jump right in.
Oh, I didn't even know you were going to ask that. I just was thinking about back to sort of how Andrew started us, Addie, and I know you hadn't been able to get here quite yet, but Andrew was talking about how, like, you know, there was all this effort in Oregon to stand up this program, in-home intensive behavioral health treatment, and what that led to was growth in some other similar types of programs, and not necessarily in the Fidelity IIBHT program. And how that relates to sort of choices and flexibility, right? And so like there just feels like there's something really kind of instructive there as we are trying to build something that's really sturdy but flexible, that we need to be aware that sometimes the thing that we may have in our minds as the exact right answer is going to look different when seen from a different perspective.
Absolutely. I think that's sturdy but flexible, right? There's a lot of conversations about sort of reeds, which are very able to stand up to wind, partially because they can bend in the wind and therefore they don't break. We hear that a lot as a conversation, that's sturdy but flexible. And I think that makes a lot of sense because we need to recognize that not all young people, not all families, it's not a one size fits all. And so really thinking through how we get there, that makes a lot of sense to me. The ask I have of this group, which no one should feel obligated, but anyone who is willing to share their art, willing to take, snap a photo on your phone and send it to any of us who either work for SOCEC or for me, and I can throw my email address in there. If you're open to sharing it, just know though, if you do share your art, if you want it signed so it's attributable to you, please do so. If you don't, that's okay. But if you share it with us, you're just giving me permission to use it in the final draft of the strategic plan. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, no problem, don't share it. But if you're open with me using it in sort of our shiny, varnished, polished end of work product, it's always really nice to not have sort of stock images and pictures of hands on top of hands. We've all seen those. So if you're open to it, I'd love folks to share with zero pressure to share on that.
And I just want to call out a couple of really meaningful comments in the chat.
Yes.
So Joylene's noticing that in many drawings, especially in our current system drawings, people were represented as doors.
Yes.
And anchoring that to Alicia's drawing where there was the gatekeeper. So kind of acknowledging that people who work in systems often can either hold a door open or shut a door in front of someone, and sort of how meaningful that sort of power is, whether people are conscious of that power or not.
Yes.
Oh, I was going to move on. If you want to respond to that, feel free.
Oh, I was just going to say, absolutely. I think that's such great insight, and to connect those two dots I really appreciate that.
And then Kati put that culturally responsive systems are flexible, or they bring the system to the individual and family versus trying to bring them into the system. And I think that's valuable enough to make sure it got said out loud in the space.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching those comments, and thanks for those who threw those comments in there, and everyone who's doing sort of all the brain work of connecting these dots and keeping us thinking about how we can grow from what we have and where we want to head to. So I really appreciate that. The last thing I want to do is, well, first I want to say, any other thoughts or comments? Just because I picked up on themes doesn't obviously mean that I caught everything. So I want to give others space to share anything they saw, anything they noticed, anything sort of like Anna was saying, worth saying in the chat or out loud.
You know, I had when Anna was drawing the comments back to where Andrew started us off today, it really got me thinking about how Oregon has this love affair with terminal uniqueness. And we don't do a really great job at times of looking at the evidence base of what's happening in other states and really taking that opportunity. We need to create it ourselves. So we've got to be this, because Oregon is different, because we're terminally unique. And I'm reflecting and thinking about, I've been thinking a lot about our piece of legislation going forward and some of the pieces that are in that legislation, in that we're not a large enough state to be everything to everybody. And at some point, we need to look at the goodness that's happening around us and be open to that, because that's part of having an evidence-based program and being able to pull that in. I wonder about where we would be had we done that to begin with and looked at the evidence instead of needing to continue to foster this environment of terminal uniqueness. So I really want to appreciate and bring that forward just as something to think about.
Yeah, lots of comments in the chat appreciating this and thinking through. Alicia, go right ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I would wholeheartedly agree, and I think I'd probably add to that if we're going to look at evidence, right, evidence-based, it can't just stop with the evidence-based services, or any evidence that we agree with, right? It has to be, if the evidence actually shows that this is good, or this has the potential of being good, or whatever the evidence shows, we actually have to look at that. And if it doesn't agree with our personal views, then that's one thing, but we still have to follow the evidence. And also, I think the other piece is also being mindful about bending the evidence to our will, or a person's will, right? Or the system's will, for that matter. I think that's one of the things, or a couple of the things I would probably call out, and I'd like us to think about as we move forward.
I see a few others off mute. I just want to make sure there's space if they want to jump in.
I would add that in all of the drawings, and I appreciate the imagery of folks trying to get into a door, but I think there's also that some people never get to a door. A door is selected for them, and that's the door that the system sends them through. Mainly in some communities, it's the juvenile justice system. So I think that, so they never get an option to try this or try something evidence-based or try that. It's right from the education system, the door is selected, and that's the path they go down. So in a true system where there's equity, everybody gets to at least go to a door to get support and not have a door selected for them.
Such a good point. I really appreciate that's part of the conversation, is being able to choose the door, have doors to choose from, knowing where the doors are, the people, the doors, both. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, and the idea that, of course, in our child welfare, our juvenile justice system, the door is chosen, and then every door thereafter sometimes is chosen for that young person or that family. And there isn't that agency that we were talking about that's so important. So thanks for sharing that. Well, this has been a really valuable conversation for me. I have pages and pages of notes. And I just want to thank everyone for stepping out of their comfort zones, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot of it, to do some drawings with or without words, getting those crayons out, hamburger versus hot dog, taking on that challenge, all of those pieces. Much appreciated. And this will set up, just so that there's some transparency, this will set up for the team that I'm working with an opportunity to craft some goals, so some overarching goals. We're going to draft them based on everything we've been hearing at the other meetings, and in particular this meeting. Where are we and where do we want to be? And then we'll bring them back for a lot more conversation. So we're going to take the information we've gathered in this sort of untraditional way, right? I didn't say what should the goals be. I sort of forced us to take a step back, look at, work on, think through some goals, and then we'll bring those goals back and say, how far off were we? Were we close? Were we totally off? And we'll work together then on what those overarching goals for the strategic plan will be. And if you remember, sort of the goals are I don't want to use a sports ball analogy, but kind of can't help it, the end, the goalposts, where we're headed, what we're working towards, and they're a little bit aspirational. And then we'll have the really concrete action steps that come after it. So the goals are really aspirational, and then we'll really, especially at our retreat, start to do all of that work of what are the specific steps that get us there in the next few years. So that's where we're headed. So I just want to thank folks for their participation. I want to give a special shout out. I know a few folks on the agenda were kind enough to adjust the time that they were speaking today so that I could come in at 1 o'clock. And I just want to really thank those folks for their flexibility, and note that I sort of owe you one. So next time I'll try and be flexible with my time in return, but don't want that to go unnoticed. And I hope you all have a great rest of your meeting. And please do, if you're open to it, send me some of those pictures. I'd love to have some to use in our final product.
Thanks, Addie. Appreciate it. So we have subcommittee reports not scheduled to start until 2:10. I like to call an audible and suggest we take a 10-minute break and come back for subcommittee reports at 2:10. How do people feel about that? To continue the sports ball analogy and April's football background. See you all at 2:10. Into our meeting. And now I have that song stuck in my head, Zafir. Thank you very little. Thanks for those of you who are turning on your cameras or putting a thumbs up in the in your little box. We know that you are back and paying attention. I know Zafir and Anderson are here. Obviously, those of you with cameras on. Caleb, I see you. Thank you, sir. Cameron, good to see you. Thanks for being here for your oh yeah update. I'm gonna get the sharing sorted out here. Slides are a little out of order. There we go. Are you seeing the subcommittee report slide? Okay. And we will wait a little longer while people return to the room. Hi, Alicia.
Sorry, I was trying to make me coffee. And then my dog distracted me and
Did you get time to make coffee?
do I?
Did you get time to make coffee?
It's brewing right now, so
Gosh. Brewing this late?
Yes, ma'am. I can drink coffee at like 5 o'clock at night and still be okay.
Oh my goodness.
See, if I drink coffee, I fall asleep. So I usually drink it right before bed.
Yep.
Wow. Nice. All right. Just 1 minute out. We'll get started with our report outs. So with OYA, Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance, it'll either be Caleb or Cameron. For Family Advisory, it will be Alicia. For Youth Council, Jesus or Zafir. And an update from Robin on HB 3835A. So let's go ahead and get started. Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance.
Hey guys, I think it's just me today. Caleb has an appointment, so he's kind of double tasking right now. But so updates from Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance, or OYA, OYAA, is that currently, well, I guess so. For those of you who don't know, Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance is tasked with coming up with a strategic plan to address youth substance use in Oregon. And so a lot of what we're doing is similar to what Addie is kind of working with SOCAC on. So just for those of you who hear us talking about all this and don't really know what the end goal or the point of it is, there you go. So right now in our process, we are working on root causes. So kind of like really getting to the bottom of what is causing what we've identified as our biggest issues or settings where youth with substance use disorders are often found. So we're about to finish up our root causes, and once that's our next meeting, and then once those are done, we're going to move on to identifying some solutions. So looking at what we identified as the biggest problems, their root causes, and then hopefully that will better inform us of solutions that will actually address the root causes versus putting a Band-Aid on the situation. So that's where we're at in our strategic planning process. Also, one thing that Caleb and I is really important to us is including or incorporating more youth leadership. So we're trying to help some of our youth members who maybe are more interested in getting into this field. A lot of our youth members are still high schoolers, which is really awesome. And so we're just trying to give them as much experience, tools, and skills. And part of that is, if they're willing, having them help us facilitate. I'm going to be out for the next 2 weeks. So hopefully some of them are excited to step into my role next week. I'm excited to hear how all of that goes. Our last thing, last meeting, I gave a quick presentation or proposal on a kind of update on how we're gonna organize our strategic plan. So we're still getting some of the last feedback from our members on that, but it's looking like that's how we're going to go forward, and have received some or a good amount of positive feedback on that proposal. And that's just really a slight reorganization and prioritization. And within that, we we've also developed some tools or kind of like checkpoints to be used to screen our work to make sure that we are living up to our goals and our values. And so that's going to be something that we do throughout this whole process, just kind of as a check-in that we're on the right track and um, just that our values are being upheld and that we don't get to the end and look back and see that we missed a huge chunk. So we're just starting to get into the implementation of these checks. So that's pretty exciting for us. It's a new thing, but we're looking forward to hopefully making sure that our work is meeting our own standards that we set for ourselves. And then lastly, everyone is, of course, always welcome to come to our meetings. We have 2 every month. So our next meeting is Wednesday, May 14th from 4 to 6. And then at the end of the month, we have another meeting Friday, May 23rd from 3 to 5 p.m. And as always, we really encourage as much participation as possible throughout our meetings. Even if you're not a voting member, there's lots of opportunities to give feedback and participate. So it just makes at least Caleb and I can't speak for everyone, but Caleb and I are really happy to see new faces, familiar faces, whoever that is. Just faces at our meeting is always amazing and just reaffirms to us that people care about the state of youth substance use in Oregon. So if those meeting times don't work out, but you still want to get maybe a more in-depth update, please feel free to reach out to me, Caleb, or Joylene, and we would love to share more information with you or share other ways to get involved with Oh Yeah. And sorry, that was a bit longer than I was expecting my update to be, but I guess that's a good thing. We have lots of stuff going on. So thanks for bearing through that.
Thank you, Cameron. The OYA meetings are really happening. There's so much good feedback from the youth in that meeting, and adults are there offering our support as well. So really good meeting. If you have a chance, don't hesitate to stop in. And now I will move to the Family Advisory Committee. I'll have Alicia give an update on that.
Yeah, so what did we do last time? We went and finalized group agreements, if I remember correctly. Yes, so we sorry. We refined and finalized our group agreements. Had some really good discussions around that. And then we went and started a discussion that we hope to be more of a long-term discussion around addressing challenges and barriers of IDD diagnoses and supports. A couple of things that were raised by several family members in that was basically a lack of awareness and stigma around IDD, especially in certain communities, including Black communities and those in rural areas, where we started talking about systemic barriers and delays in evaluation and diagnoses, and then how the potential of failure to identify IDD and or co-occurring conditions with IDD can actually have a dramatic negative impact on the person and their families. So one of the things, I think a couple of things that we're going to try to do is look at identifying folks that could come to the family committee to talk about IDD and help create or address the stigma and lack of awareness around IDD. I think that's going to be one of the first steps that we're going to try to take, along with additional action items that hopefully we can make a list of additional action items for future conversations. And I don't know, Annette, do you have anything else to add?
No, as we really just ramp up to get the committee going, I feel like we're really starting off with the IDD and advocacy. I think those are two really big things that we're working on. So yeah, that's all I would add. It's growing and growing. Right. So next step, our youth council, either Zafir or Jesus.
Hello. Youth council updates. There's not a ton to speak of, but throughout the last little couple meetings, we've been trying to focus more on like internal work for a while there. And I think I mentioned this last council meeting actually, but for a while there, it was just basically, presenter after presenter after presenter. So we never really had time to focus on what we're doing. And right now we're kind of pivoting our focus towards more of the strategic planning, assisting with that for SOCAC, giving our feedback on that, seeing how we can give our input, as well as like the conversation on like prioritizing barriers. We did have the panel presentation at the Oregon Alliance Summit I forgot where it was at because I can never remember the name of it. And that was amazing.
On the coast somewhere.
Shalahan.
Salishan.
That was amazing. If y'all were there, the folks on the youth council really stood out, and did a great job. I'm proud of all of them. Yeah, I don't know if I'm missing out anything, Sophia.
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. The only thing I will add to the Alliance presentation is that they are like legally required in my mind to have us back. So like you guys should all be there next year.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. From the Youth Council. Any other committee updates? Grants Committee, Ledge Committee, or Robin's going to go in a second and give us an update, but anything from grants?
Emily, I have a child working on a project. I hope it's not too disrupting. I think from the grants subcommittee, Christy and I have decided to slow down a little bit. I think all of us are a little thin. But I think that our main focus is letting the locals know that the reporting is less this year. Starting to think about how we think strategically about what the locals are doing and how it fits in with our strategic plan, and wanting to make sure that it's sustainable and meaningful for the local systems of care. She's okay. It's okay. Okay. And then Anna, did I miss anything in the construction havoc that is in my house right now?
Thank you, Emily. I'll update DEI. We'll be meeting on Friday. We're really going to dig deep into what is culture? What does culture mean when we put that word out there, culturally responsive, specific? What does that mean? So we'll be in some breakout rooms, kind of flush that out. We've gotten some information from DEI experts, I believe, from OHA and from other state offices. So we'll be digging deep into that on Friday, and really try to flesh that out. So we're being responsive to what different communities need. And with that, I will go ahead and get an update from Robin on HB 3835A.
I will happily give you an update. We are headed to the Rules Committee on Monday and are working on our presentation to rules on Monday, and we should have the amendments at some point this week that we will be able to send out and about. But I think we've had some overviews of the amendments, and specifically, we're going to go over those overviews if anybody's interested tomorrow morning in the Legislative Committee. We're also going to review the GARE tool analysis that we'll be submitting as well. So if those items are of interest to you, Leg Committee is on at 8:30 tomorrow morning, and we would love to have you join us. Anna, did I miss anything in there?
I mean, if you want to do an overview of what's in the amendments, that's fine, or we can wait to dig into the details of it tomorrow. That's up to you, Chair Henderson.
If we have a minute, I'm more than happy to go into an overview of the amendments briefly. I happen to have one right in front of me. Do we have?
Yeah, we have time.
We have 13 minutes. So.
Well, I will do that. This is just a really high-level overview of what the amendments will do. The first thing that we have done is we're removing any changes for schools completely from the bill. Things were with the schools that was creating a lot of grief and consternation. And so we are leaving the schools 100% as they were. Child abuse investigations will continue to occur as they have since 2023. This does keep the serious bodily injury threshold for actions in schools, keeps a list of prohibited restraints as abuse in schools, and keeps the 2028 sunset in place, which will necessitate legislative discussions on education prior to 2028. So it was a tough decision, and it came up very rapidly. And Adam and Annette and I were able to have some conversations about that. And truly, it was the best thing to do at that moment to take the school portion out. Do we have any questions about the school portion and that coming out at this time? The second part of the amendments, hearing none, I'm going to go to the second part of the amendments. We're focusing primarily on child caring agencies and out-of-state medical treatment and Medicaid access. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about in terms of the terminal uniqueness of Oregon. Amendments are specifying authority for ODHS to take licensing actions. So when things occur, those impact license, not necessarily people, unless it meets the definition of abuse and neglect, and then it does impact people, as it always would. Defines rules for selecting crisis intervention trainings, changes wrongful restraint language to abusive restraint to clearly state when actions are defined as child abuse, because we want to make sure that everybody's really clear about the difference between what are restraints that are used and what is actually child abuse and what that looks like. We're addressing concerns regarding secure transport and escort language, and we've added back in a definition, also adding in additional legislative oversight and reporting on the entire bill. We've added in elements from Senate Bill 1113 into prohibited restraint language on prevention of imminent life-threatening injuries. And we've added language to make it clear that the alignment with Medicaid rules for medical treatment access for kids in child welfare custody clarified that this is not an out-of-state placement, but it is out-of-state medical treatment for medically necessary services. And I think that distinction is super important. A lot of times what we've got in the history in Oregon is Oregon's history of using placements, out-of-state placements, to send kids to warehouse. That is not what this is. This is medically necessary treatment like we would do for a youth who has cancer. That type of cancer treatment is not available in Oregon. That happens all the time. But there's highly specialized eating disorders treatment and other types of treatment for specific illnesses that we just don't have in Oregon, and we probably never will. I mean, I have a Medicaid partial hospitalization eating disorders program, and I know in our program, we do have to send kids who need a higher level of care out of state. But if it was often enough that we could run the program ourselves, you bet we would. There's just not that high of a volume for that very highly specialized type of care. So we really feel that we've put some services and supports in there. There are a few staff positions, including a medical director for DHS. Having a medical director oversight for DHS, I think, is going to make a whole lot of helpful things for them, along with some other targeted positions. I think primarily at DHS, ODDS, and the Health Authority, correct?
There's one position at the Health Authority. It's a like a coordination position for these out-of-state treatment times, 3 or 4 times a year when that happens, but then also to help coordinate the temporary lodging work that is happening between child welfare and OHA that they have found is different people within OHA need to be involved in different cases. So there's a person who will sort of be that point person at OHA to coordinate those solutions. The bulk of the staff will be going into the Office of Developmental Disability Services and then a couple of staff at ODHS.
So perhaps, Anna, we can put the link to the meeting in the chat so anybody who wants to come to the Legislative Committee meeting tomorrow morning and be there for the review with the GARE tool and also to dive in a little deeper on those amendments, you are welcome to come. Any other questions that we have? All right, I'll give you back your time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Alicia.
Do y'all, what, are we gonna have to wait until tomorrow to be able to view the GARE tool analysis or will that be sent out today before so that I can review it before? Because sometimes it's a lot easier for me to view something before the meeting, so that I don't get kind of like bogged down on some of the things.
Totally.
I'm going to put Cody on the spot. Cody has been assigned, not taken, responsibility for taking the DEI committee approved GARE tool and adjusting it to the new amendments. And his goal was to get it sent out by the end of this meeting. So he has been, I will admit, multitasking a little bit during today's meeting. Cody, are you going to be able to get that sent out before the end of the day today?
Yes, it is ready to go. It is still in draft version, because we'll be getting more feedback tomorrow, to make any needed changes. But I'm planning to send out the track change version so that we can see the edits that were made from the DEI approved GARE tool. Spoiler alert, most of it's all deletions from things that have been removed from the bill, and then a couple additions on the secure transport. Other than that, most of it's removing things as things have been removed from the bill and not edited to them. But hopefully we'll be able to get that sent out this afternoon.
Awesome, thank you. And then I guess is the new amendment already on OLIS or? Okay.
No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't been finalized yet.
It hasn't
but
finalized.
It'll be done today.
Yeah, I haven't even seen it yet. If that helps, Alicia.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it I guess because y'all know how like my brain works. Like it's a lot easier for me to read it and then follow through. So do you know if y'all are gonna have it by tomorrow or is that something that we need to wait for basically sometime this week to get?
I don't think we know. I see Anna holding a finger up like she's checking her inbox because I believe it was Rob Nose who submitted the amendment, so his office would control information, over when it would be released. Like as far as like a timeline, knowing a timeline.
Yeah, and I'm checking. I don't see final answer on when that will be ready for sharing yet, Alicia, but we'll get it out as soon as we have permission to. And my hope is today that's also today, so you have time to read it. It is in that very difficult to read. Things are italicized and bolded and struck out and all of that. And I think when I reviewed it not last night, the night before, it was 102 pages. So I don't know if holding yourself to the standard of reading every word in there is a realistic expectation. but maybe you can focus on the bolded pieces, or that you can kind of see where the text is a different color, and that's where things have changed. So if that's helpful to direct your attention.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's just like it's the I guess the visual aspect for me, and then being able to listen to it or hear the conversation helps a lot in my understanding. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just quickly want to thank you, Alicia, for your leadership in asking for what you need in public. I know that it's not always easy, and I think what you're demonstrating for people is that like we should do that. If we need it in a certain way, we need it on a certain timeline, like say the thing, right? And that gives other people permission to ask for what they need to. So thank you for just doing the thing.
And if I'll just add, if we do get it, and you do read it this evening, Alicia, because I know you are a bit of a night owl sometimes. I'm gonna be asleep at 9 o'clock, so take notes and send it to me before 8:30 if you do that. So yes, but if we do get it, that would be great. I would appreciate that.
Asleep at 9 o'clock, Adam?
Oh yeah, like a baby.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
9 o'clock is when that's me time. That's after work. That's me time until like 2.
I'm, good for you. Like, you do you. I'll be sleeping peaceful.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to Adam and for public comment.
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes early, but as always, we want to reserve time for public comment. So we'll open it up now if anybody's here, and then we'll of course wait if nobody has anything to say through to 2:40 in case anybody pops in that was waiting to join us. But does anybody have any public comment? Feel free to raise your hand, come off mute. Second opportunity for folks to share their shape and subconscious aura color if you would like. Shout out to Corinne Hale, who's not here today, but is often here. That was her check-in question, not mine. I stole it. I just want to give credit where credit is due. Hang for another minute or two at least, folks, and make sure that we get to stretchiest of stretch, huh, Adam? Well, we appreciate that. You should have got your MSW. We do this stuff all the time at social work school.
No, I had the Master of Education, which is odd because you'd think there would be mine. It was all feelings, nothing but feelings. So that was mine. No art required.
Nice. Were there any art projects in law school, Coop? Yeah?
The art of lying.
Well, sure. Yeah, we do know that about all you attorneys. Anybody else got anything? We'll wait another minute because I don't want to move too quickly.
I am going to put something in the chat. Most people, this will be public comment. Some people know that since I started on SOCAC, my role has changed at HealthShare, where I'm now working primarily with our intersection between healthcare and homeless services in the counties we serve in HealthShare. And I think we're doing really cool work. It hasn't yet expanded to the youth world yet, but we just got a really cool write-up in the Lund report for some of the projects we're doing. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's not necessarily related to the work we're doing, but it kind of shows the power of system integration and people working together to do right by people. And we just have such little like positive news right now. I would like to share it with everybody because I think it's really cool. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Feel free to read it or don't read it, whatever you want, but I think it's cool.
Zafir, go ahead.
This just gives me an excuse to show people crochet because I think it'll make people happy. So I have a show this weekend. I do conventions and I sell crochet stuff, and I got dragons done. All of them are named after fruits and vegetables. So this right here is maraschino. We love her. And then this is durian. Because I keep hearing girls on film and it's ruining me. So there you go. Daily dose of happiness. Yee.
Dan, those are lovely. Oh, by the way, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe not to selflessly plug you, but it's Barry Can't Craft. Is that the?
Yes, that is me.
That's
on Instagram, you can hear me rant and rave and talk about crochet and pretty much just crochet and voice acting. It's very fun.
And I'm seeing in the chat some people commenting how lovely, your art is, and others that they didn't get to do art in their social work program. So, well, there you go. We've waited a couple minutes. Is there any other public comment? Right. Do we need another break or do you want to push through and get done early?
Push through.
Folks, okay. Just pushing? Because we could do housekeeping. We could bump housekeeping up and then still be probably on time for the Herc folks. If we've got, do we have folks coming for the Herc conversation? No, it's just us. Oh, so then let's just do it.
Just us. We can just barrel our way through this and give ourselves maybe a whole hour of our lives back.
Boy, oh boy. Let's not meet just to meet. Although, again, I do enjoy a good connection before content discussion. But we've got Christy, our very own Christy, to talk about the request for comment at an upcoming Health Evidence Review Commission meeting and how it is tied to a barrier form that came to us years ago. So then we're going to have after Christy kind of gives us the rundown, we'll talk about whether we as a council want to submit comments, and if so, vote on a proposal. If someone makes a motion to that effect, there is an attachment in the calendar invite. And with that, I'm turning it over to you, Christy.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so this question stems from a barrier that was submitted by the Tri-County System of Care way back in 2019, which I will note was actually before the SOCAC was stood up and actually meeting. I don't fully know the story or understand why SOCAC ended up adopting this specific barrier, but nevertheless, it is one of the many barriers that we have been tracking and trying to resolve. I will drop the barrier as it was initially provided to SOCAC. The underlying issue was lack of access to psychiatric care and psychiatric providers. And this letter details 5 recommendations, so 5 ways that Tri-County System of Care was asking OHA to respond. One of those 5 recommendations was related to use of acupuncture and other complementary therapies. And I quote, "We recommend that the Oregon Health Authority look at pairing alternative treatments such as acupuncture and yoga with PTSD and other anxiety-related diagnoses that are likely the result of trauma."
Shortly after this barrier was provided, so a few months later, OHA did provide a response. And in that response, they said, yep, sounds great. We hear your suggestion. We will direct the HERC to conduct an analysis of the literature about effectiveness of acupuncture for these other conditions. The HERC actually did complete that analysis, and we have a copy of that if you are interested. And kind of trying to do some research and following any policy decisions that came out of this barrier, I learned that the question around acupuncture for mental health diagnoses is once again being brought to the HERC, the Health Evidence Review Committee, and specifically the Values-Based Subcommittee. They have a meeting on May 15th. By which they are going to be talking about a proposal that was brought to them, I think, through like the Oregon Acupuncture Society, who is also requesting a review and potential addition of mental health diagnoses to the HERC's prioritized list around what is covered and what is not covered. So as it relates to this barrier, as it relates to this potential opportunity to submit public comment at this meeting on May 15th, the question to the council today is, do you all want to do this? Is there evidence for these things? I did float this to the executive council, who suggested also passing it along to Kyle and Carissa. I don't know if either of them are still with us on the call or have any insight as to, use of acupuncture for these diagnoses, but would love to hear the conversation. And in the interest of aviation security, Carissa, are you with us?
I am. I'm in an
Hi.
airport, so you
Hi.
might be hearing some background noise.
Yeah, I hear you fine. Thanks.
So I didn't get a chance to do too deep of a dive into the literature. Most of the literature I saw was based on adults. And I think I had mentioned to you, I'm curious, I did not find any research that showed using acupuncture and alternative treatments had a reduction in the need for mental health providers. So I'm not sure how effective it would be at reducing the burden on mental health providers.
Emily?
So this definitely is teetering into the land of TMI, but I have used acupuncture. My doctors have suggested it as a way to respond to my anxiety. And so for me, I'm thinking about the equity around poverty. Like if we're talking about Medicaid paying for it, like if private insurance will pay for it, if a mental health professional says it would be helpful, then I think from an equity principle, we should be thinking about that too. Now, I'm with Christy where I think you're going, which is like many of us are not clinicians. And so as a council, we can't necessarily say HERC should cover this because it's medically necessary. It's more that if a clinician says that it's medically necessary, kind of going back to the early periodic screening and diagnostic testing side of things. Like if a clinician says it's medically necessary and a young person is Medicaid eligible, then I think it should be covered. Because kids on private insurance get it, people on private insurance get it. That's just my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Emily. Alicia?
Yeah, so I agree with what Emily was saying, and I think in some of the email correspondence that I had sent out, that's pretty much what I had mentioned, is that if the medical provider or the provider who's working with the family and the youth is suggesting that they try acupuncture, then I mean, quite honestly, it should be between this should be a decision between the provider and their patient, right, or their client. Now, I to Carissa's point, I don't necessarily see it as kind of a necessity to reduce the burden on mental health providers, but I actually see it more as a necessity to support family voice and youth voice when they're asking for additional services or when they're asking for services. So like earlier when we were talking about the whole gatekeeping thing, right? Whenever I mentioned in my drawing, I guess the gatekeeping, if it's an available resource that's also potentially cost effective, which one of the throughout the evaluation here that I was able to read, there was throughout the whole report, it said that it's potentially a cost-effective resource for people. So all that to say, I would suggest that we potentially do more of a broader statement if we do provide a statement to the HERC. And I don't know, Anna or Christy, if you still have the kind of generalized statement in the email that I had sent, or I guess it was to the executive committee. If not, I can try to pull it up. But it wouldn't necessarily make it to where we say, hey, we think this is medically necessary, but it would kind of make a statement similar to what Emily was saying, is that if a provider suggests that this is medically necessary, then perhaps it should be, we should utilize it or allow for it to be paid for. I would also note two more things that the conversations that we as a council have had multiple times is that, families and youth are asking for alternative treatment and alternative therapy, right? Including things like equine therapy and yoga and those types of treatment modalities. And in addition to that, the Special Master Report from the CASA Special Master Report has also recommendations, or part of that report includes recommendations to expand on treatments and access to alternative treatments as well. So I just wanted to put that in there, or plug that into. Thank you.
I can't see if anyone else's hands are up, so I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but I do want to make sure that we're noting this as a complementary type of therapy versus an alternative. Just looking at the potential harms of people seeking out one form of treatment versus another. I want to make sure that kids are getting evidence-based medicine. So if that's, seeing a psychiatrist and using pharmacology, I completely appreciate the idea of people trying other things, but I do want to make sure that it's evidence-based and we aren't doing any harm to kids by doing those things.
Thanks, Carissa. Saphir?
I did put in the chat a bit earlier, but I personally have experience with this. My partner has a 17-year-old sister. She's trans and autistic, so a lot of anxiety, especially right now. And she was recommended to acupuncture, and it's been a very obvious change in how she's kind of like gone through the world since doing that. So I guess for me, even though I have personal feelings about it. Just having the option for people to do that, I think, is very important, especially if we're coming at it from an equity lens. Acupuncture as a black kid in Portland is not something that like is offered to you. So for me, it's like knowing that that could be something that you can go to a doctor and be like, I think this might work, and then I don't know. It feels a lot more accessible. And I think when I forgot who was just talking, I was talking about the potential for harm. I feel like the same way that I was saying earlier of like you have to go through multiple therapists before you find the one that you like. You have to try different things out before you find the thing that actually helps you. And I think having more avenues for people to be able to do that is better than having few just because we're worried about the potential for harm.
Thanks, Fear. Robin?
I have a little bit of a process question in here, and where I'm a fan of acupuncture. Lots of people in my family use it. It's been great. Does a lot of different things for a lot of different things. The barrier specifically was about the use of acupuncture in youth, in kids, as a means of addressing the shortage of psychiatrists, correct?
Yes.
The barrier is about lack of access to psychiatrists. The recommended solution was about provision of acupuncture for PTSD, anxiety, etc. I don't think it was specific to youth, but assuming that that is our lane in this conversation, 0 to 25, I think that if there was a comment provided to the values-based subcommittee, it wouldn't be an age-related conversation. It would be acupuncture as a treatment for anyone with these things, regardless of age.
And I had showing her for a while the question that sits before the HERC, right, Health Evidence Review Commission, which is also attached to your calendar invitation if you're an appointed member. They are talking about it both for substance use reduction as well as for anxiety and PTSD, along with a couple of other mental health conditions.
So here's my process question in the context of all of that. In our role in terms of addressing barriers and getting into all of this lane of the crossover between acupuncture and mental health treatment, and the fact that we're SOCAC and we're identified with primarily serving the 0 to 25 and all those other types of things, is it possible for us as individuals to support this rather than as an entire council, and use that as a means? Because I don't know if this is our council's lane.
Yeah,
It's just, I agree with Jesus. It's weird.
We don't have to do anything. Correct, Robin.
Okay, thank you.
Anderson.
Hey, yeah, I agreed with a lot of the conversation, and just want to lift up a little bit of what Alicia was saying. I think there was a good point there of like having a broad statement and kind of weaving these pieces together in terms of like improving access to care in general. Like if acupuncture is a replacement to try and fill in the gap for like psychiatric services, like, right, that does not necessarily feel great. But if it's something that maybe we're saying that there should be opportunity for folks, if it's recommended by the providers and families, to be able to try out, that might be a like not specifically acupuncture, but like in general for like best practice things, like that might be a maybe a direction to take, especially like for our youth when it comes down to it, looking at best practices. Because on the one hand, it's using evidence-based practice resources, but then there's also like things that have not yet been researched, but like has a lot of good standing, when it comes down to it, that hasn't gotten that research yet. And it's important to also thinking about those things. I think for us, I agree this is kind of interesting gray area, and I'm curious if having more so the broad statement of supporting alternative services in general for mental health wellness might be a direction we go in. Thank you.
Thanks, Anderson. Dan?
Thanks. I have really mixed feelings about this. I'm not well versed in the research on the effectiveness of acupuncture. My impression is it's reasonably well supported for pain. I'm not aware of research that shows effectiveness for mental health conditions. And at the same time, that's exactly why HERC exists, is to evaluate the evidence for different treatments and make recommendations based on that evidence. And sometimes HERC will give weight to community sentiment that maybe will put it over the edge in terms of recommending a service for which the evidence isn't real clear. On the one hand, I don't feel like we have a role in telling HERC what the evidence says, because, you know, I'm a clinician and I don't really know what the evidence says. And that's why they're there, is to figure that out. So then do we sort of want to make a statement that, well, even if it's not an evidence-based treatment, we still want to make it available, paid for, spend public resources on it. I can appreciate the equity argument for it, and at the same time, there's an argument in treatment world that what doesn't help hurts, because people sort of have a limited number of things sometimes that they're willing to try to address their concerns. And man, I tried this and I tried that and nothing helped. So I can appreciate the arguments for it, and yet I still am not super comfortable taking a position like, yeah, this is something HERC should definitely approve. And then also, I just want to, I think a couple other people have said this, but as a solution to the barrier of not having enough psychiatrists, I think it's a really lousy solution to that problem. So if that's the problem we're trying to address, I don't think that's a good reason to move forward with this.
Yeah, I fully agree with that statement, Dan, about like this is not a replacement for child psychiatry. And my concern is that if it were open, like, would this then be marked as a service that would show as if folks got access to care for said issue, right? And like that to me is what, like, that's problematic and really concerning to me if all of a sudden it were like, oh no, this person needed services and they got acupuncture, so it looks like they've received access to care when really what they needed was child psychiatry. So that's a major concern for me. I don't know if that's true or not, but that would be something I'd want to know before I considered supporting this. You know, I'm looking at the letter from March 2019. And, you know, that was written by, it looks like, HealthShare and the Tri-County System of Care, along with the Children's System Advisory Council, which is an advisory body to Oregon Health Plan OHA, Child and Family Behavioral Health, right? So it was pre the System of Care Advisory Council existing. So I'm curious why CSAC, right, the Children's System Advisory Council, wouldn't weigh in since this was their letter, not ours. So, you know, just a little bit, I just want to flag that too. So I would prefer to just let this play out. We don't need to take a position on this. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't feel educated enough to support it either.
Thanks, Adam. Alicia, and then Kyle.
So I'm struggling with this conversation a little bit because this conversation right now that we're having like exemplifies exactly the problem that families run into when it comes to seeking support and services for their children and their youth, or themselves in order for them to support their children and their youth. So it's this: if a family member or a family or a youth, has a conversation with their provider and that provider and they come up with a potential solution, which includes, hey, why don't we try acupuncture? But here we are sitting as a council, and saying that, well, I don't feel comfortable with advocating to expand potential service coverage, because I personally am not, well versed in it. Again, gatekeeping, right? Like what I feel like we're doing right now is gatekeeping again. It really, honestly, I understand that HERC plays a role, right? And a person's provider plays the ultimate role in terms of what the person should be or should not be trying for your try as a solution, right? Now, I would not advocate this to be as a replacement for psychiatric therapy, because and y'all have heard me say this time and time again, I don't believe that ABA replaces psychiatric therapy either, right? And again, but there are, if individuals receive ABA therapy, they are considered to have received services, when potentially that is not the service that they would have needed. So the same concept applies here to acupuncture, just that the only difference is that ABA is already being covered versus acupuncture not being covered. Now, with that said, we do have places like the Departments of Veterans Affairs that has provided or has studies or supported studies where they've actually utilized acupuncture to treat PTSD or help. It's more like I believe Carissa was saying, as a complementary option. So they were using other treatments and therapies in addition to that. What I was referring to is that, again, I'm not advocating that we say, yes, you absolutely should, replace or use acupuncture as a replacement for psychiatric therapy. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that if a family member or a family and youth and their provider want to utilize alternative or complementary treatment, it ought to be covered. Especially when we're talking about non-crisis level treatment. I just want to be clear that I'm not advocating for a replacement here. I'm bringing family voice to the table. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I want us to be very mindful to not be the gatekeepers in terms of who gets what kind of treatment at what point in time.
Thanks, Alicia. Kyle?
Yeah, for what it's worth, in my 26 years of practice at Dornbecker, I think I've had one case where acupuncture was used in a patient with chronic pain, and I'm not certainly not aware of it being evidence-based treatment for PTSD in youth or anxiety disorders in youth or depression. There may be research that I'm not aware of in regards to pain. It probably is, but I also am not aware of many kids in our pain disorder clinic at OHSU getting acupuncture. So I wanted to make that statement. I certainly don't agree with it. Access to acupuncture being a replacement for access to psychiatrist or psychiatric care. Yeah, I wonder if what will be the next complementary alternative treatment that will be advocated for our approval of, with likely very limited evidence behind it. And I think Adam had an approach of just waiting to see how this plays out. I also have concerns about HERC seeking approval for all ages rather than, yes, there may be some evidence based in adults, but that's much different than an evidence based in kids.
Is that so? As our resident medical expert, can you say a little bit more about that, Dr. Kyle Johnson? Like evidence-based in adults not being the same as evidence-based in children. I don't know much about the difference there. Like certain drugs work for kids and don't work for adults, or like what are you saying?
Yes, exactly. Kids are not little adults. Now, we're responsible for a wide range of ages, right? 0 to 25.
Yep.
So yeah, 24-year-old's much different than a 13-year-old.
Like
but yeah, there's
physiologically?
Yes.
I think you mean physiologically.
Yeah. Ability to metabolize drugs and so forth. So there's examples of pharmacology where medicines that are helpful for adults for depression, say, are not as helpful for youth and adolescents.
Okay. Okay,
But
that's helpful.
or there could be some potential harms that are more likely to occur in younger people compared to older people too.
Yeah, and I don't know how the HERC handles this. Like just because a treatment is on the prioritized list, does that mean it's provided and covered for everybody, regardless of age? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope in a say acupuncture was not approved for people of younger than 18, that there could be exceptions made, and that one could advocate for an exceptions in unusual cases where more evidence-based treatments haven't been effective, and yeah, and then more of a complementary alternative treatment could be advocated for. A single case agreement, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks. And I saw Jill Archer in the chat is confirming that HERC can discern by age, and I think it depends. It just says it depends. They can discern by age. So I assume that they decide whether they approve it for all ages or whether they approve. Zafir and Anderson raise and lower hands.
I don't know I don't know how else to say it, but this feels very slippery to me. I really don't like it. They're taking one thing, such as everyone having access to this thing if they would like it, or if it seems like it makes sense, or if their physician recommends it, which is great. And then they're actually making another situation worse by being like, not even if like you go to your doctor and your doctor's like, you should try acupuncture, but like actively using that instead of getting more psychologists. That's an issue, because to me it's not, it starts to feel, I don't know, it has both, it causes both issues with equity and access, and it feels like it's under the guise of trying to be helpful, but in reality it's causing more harm. And respectfully, as someone new to the council, sees that a lot. And not that we have to do anything about it. We don't have to say anything about it, right? Like they're not gonna twist our arm behind our back and make us say yes. But it's just very frustrating to see that. Because like I don't even know what to say. Like I feel like yes, people should have access to the care that they want and that works for them. No, we still need more psychologists and more therapists. Why is that? These are apples and oranges. They're from the same orchard, but they're not the same fruit, and it's very frustrating.
I think Zafir, what you were just naming there is like I don't know what the intent is behind the HERC, right? Like what we do know from the request that we had in front of us from and now I've closed it. From that was the proposal that went to the Health Evidence Review Commission, came from the some acupuncture society, right? But so definitely like they want more business. There's that sort of personal motivation behind it, which is fair. They believe in what they do. But I don't know that it says, and I can look for it and pull it back up again, like as a replacement, it just says coverage, right? So I don't know if because of the letter that says we recommend that we look at pairing alternative treatments for like acupuncture for PTSD and other anxiety related like disorders or challenges. I don't know that anxiety is always a disorder. Like I think we're making that adding that layer to it, and it's not necessarily a layer that the HERC is considering at all.
It feels like something they might need to consider because it just feels very, I don't know. It just doesn't.
So we just and I understand what you're saying now. Like you're wanting to make sure that if we do take a position, we take a position that this is in addition to and not in replacement for.
Yeah, not even in like take a position. I don't like how this. I don't like what they're asking, and I don't like how they presented it.
Got you. Okay. And then I'm going to call out Cameron's comment in the chat. I know she's doing this because she's not a voting member, but Cameron, you're a person with lived experience. You can speak up anytime you want. It says, I think most of us agree it's really the specifics of what we are advocating for. We all want to see it become more available for those who want it as a supplement, yet none of us want to support it as a replacement. And there's a question mark there, like, am I getting this right? So if that's the vibe that you're all picking up. Okay.
Also just like, I guess I'll unmute now. I didn't know if I was allowed to or not, but I like personally was someone who was in acute care for like most of my childhood, and I've never ever to this day been offered any type of like alternative treatment as a supplement or replacement or anything like that. So this is just like a really interesting conversation for me because I don't know, like if it had been offered, would that be something that was accessible even, or was it not offered because it wasn't accessible, or was it not offered because it was 20 years ago and it's more Eastern medicine than Western medicine, or like what are the reasons for that and like what could have changed? But I guess just based on personal anecdotes, like it was never even a thought to use this in this way. So I don't know, it's just really interesting for me to think about. And then also I think my other comment is that like I think a lot of it comes down to the referring person, if I'm understanding this right, because even with this acupuncture, they would need to be referred by someone else to have this as a treatment. And so then to me, the question or the onus would be on the referring provider as like recommending acupuncture either in supplement or in replacement. So that then becomes like the provider's choice or recommendation is how I think I'm understanding it, but I could be wrong. But that's just my I guess personal experience as someone who's like been in the youth acute care system for like the past 20 years. It's just like this has never even been something that's been offered to me in Oregon. So it's just I am also concerned with it becoming a replacement. However, to me, we're not even like close to it becoming a replacement because it's not even a supplement yet, if that makes sense. But I also 100% understand the like I agree with the hesitation there. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. Alicia?
I want to I want to be very clear when I'm here advocating for this, okay? And I think what's happening in this conversation that we're having is that we're kind of like conflating multiple things here. One is a HERC request basically to review acupuncture. Then we have the Oregon, Acupuncture Association, who's saying that yes, we should definitely expand the treatment or access to treatment to acupuncture. And then we have the letter from the local SOC that was supported by CSAC, right? All three of those say different things. And I want us to be very, very careful in terms of conflating the three different letters or three different asks here, and not not assuming that all three of them are one single request. Okay, so while yes, the letter from the local SOC from many years ago might read as if acupuncture is supposed to be a replacement. I am not advocating that we say, yes, let's do that, right? What I'm advocating is that we go with the expanded route in saying, given, all this information that we have, including the special master report that suggests that we expand treatment or access to certain treatments, and utilizing all the feedback that we've kind of gathered here, and make it very clear that SOCAC is not advocating that acupuncture should be a replacement for psychiatric treatment, right? So that I think it would be an important thing, and I think SOCAC plays a role because of the one of the pieces is in terms of that we were made aware of the special master report, right? We also play a role since we are looking at the system of care in the state of Oregon. If we do decide to make a statement, I would highly recommend, and I would hope that we would make it very clear to HERC that yes, we need more options. And kind of just going to or building on what Cameron was saying is that we don't even know if it could be helpful to some people, even if it's just a first step or an interim kind of support until someone can get to, or get support in psychiatric care. So we have no clue because we don't have the data. So therefore we can't even say that there is no evidence there, because it's not evidence-based, right? Because we don't even have the data. That's what I'm trying to say. So I wonder, again, if we can, or if we do decide to make the statement, or if we do to support expansion, that we make it clear that we're not looking at replacement, or that SOCAC really would not want this to move towards replacement. But that it's a good idea to expand access to it, especially if it's something that the provider and the family agree to.
All right, we're approaching time here, so thoughts? Is anyone making? HERC is going to hear this, right? Like that's happening. Anyone can comment, right? The question is, does the System of Care Advisory Council like have interest, desire, strong feeling to make a comment? There's no requirement to make a comment. So, I'm just going to ask, is anyone making a motion to make a comment?
Can I say that, to what was said there, that we make a motion to ask for more specificity in what that looks like? Is
We don't
that
really have that authority, Anderson. This is a public meeting
all
that
or nothing?
they're receiving comment, and the idea was proposed that we might want to submit it, but there's not like a dialogue between the HERC and the SOCAC. It's like we either stay quiet on it or we share our opinion with them. Those are kind of the two choices that are available to us.
Well, there's the system thing right there. Okay. I wish they were here for the conversation.
That's always a great idea. Can always get better at that.
Again, this is a long-standing barrier that dates back to before the System of Care Advisory Council existed. We're looking to close this one out, and HERC is hearing, and making a decision about this. So I'll give another quiet pause to see if anyone wants to formulate and make a comment that we would then go through the consensus process on, or if we want to leave it. No, go ahead.
I would say that I would support making a comment. I think the concern is that if the comment is that either yes, we support it, or no, we don't. If we say yes, and then this gets misused in ways that we've all just talked about, we wouldn't want to see happen. That's where my general concerns are. But if we are able to say we support increasing access of various modalities and services to our families and youth, if that's what we're able to say in that comment, then I would be okay with that.
I would agree with Anderson. If we could say, no, we are not in support of this being a replacement, but we are in support of this being an option for people who need it. I think that is essentially the one line to take away from the whole conversation.
I would agree with that as well. I mean, I think, the conversation of evidence-based is such a nothing conversation for so long. But I think right now we're kind of just stuck in saying nothing and this doesn't pass kind of closes the door for us to seek culturally responsive care in a way that's covered, but also I wouldn't want to grandstand any side of this just because of the phrasing of how things are, and I wouldn't want it to get misconstrued. So I definitely agree with just making a statement that we would like an expansion in things that would be covered as alternatives, but not as replacements.
And I would add to that, like as a clinician, there is research that says essentially that um, you increase positive results for clients if there is like medication alongside therapy in general when it comes down to that. And being able to have care that clients, patients, people are able to choose is really important. Now, that does not extend specifically to acupuncture, and that's why I wish there was more research around that. And so, like, that'd be great if, having a statement like that opens up the conversation to then providing resources or something like that to where there can be some research around there. Because like as a clinician, that is an issue in the community of like, man, I wish I could do this care therapy, but I can't bill for it. I can't, in knowing that this is a, culturally specific service, or at least there's a lot of background in that families and youth would want to be able to explore if they had it as an option, I think would be huge.
So it sounds like you have a motion to have the SOCAC write a letter to the HERC stating that we sort of, in general concept, support the idea of acupuncture for mental health services, and we want to be clear that we don't support it as a replacement for psychiatry and increasing access to, I don't know, you all, psychiatry, psychology.
That is my motion.
Okay.
Pull up the consensus slide. Got that thing handy.
Yep, getting there. Just a sec.
Okay.
Are you seeing it?
I am. So, okay. Before we're making any decisions, consider what are the racial equity impacts of this particular decision? Who will benefit from or be burdened by this decision? Are there strategies to mitigate any unintended consequences? And is completion of the full racial equity worksheet warranted? Does anybody have any thoughts on those questions?
I do. I just have a little bit of concern about basically from a equity lens, who gets what type of treatment. I would hate to see a situation where Black kids, brown kids were getting this type of treatment while other groups are getting this kind of treatment. So in that sense, maybe a racial equity worksheet is warranted because they're two different treatments, two different psychiatric, psychological, and then we have acupuncture. So those are two different things. So I would be until we do this and see what the impacts are going to be across the board. I would not be in favor of it, of some kids getting, and I don't want to be mean, but getting a lesser type of care, and this other group gets care. So we know historically that has happened over and over and over to communities of color. So I would hate for that to be the case here, but that's why I'm voicing my reservation about it.
Heard. Annette, does that mean that you want to stop moving forward with this conversation until we can complete a full racial equity worksheet on it? And that's your decision to make, naming the timeline that this public comment is due on May 15th.
I could move forward on that until we actually did that. I standard of care in different communities is very real, and these people get this type of care and other people get another type of care. If we're talking about access to care to resolve a crisis situation, I don't think giving, I'm saying it could potentially happen that
Yeah.
these kids are tracked to the acupuncturist and these, get a psychiatrist or psychologist.
Yeah, that's a fair concern. Emily.
Yeah, I hear Annette's concern, and I think, a worksheet makes sense. I also think it's possible for us to think about with whatever we send to HERC to also remind them of the obligations to track race, ethnicity, English, age, language, and disability in terms of who gets services, because then I think we can study that because we know it happens. It's always happened, and I think that's the power of Real D. And so I think that that's just something to like fold into this conversation too.
So I think we've got a request for the full equity worksheet to be completed. So that is what our next step is. The comment is due by the 15th. I know that staff have, it's going to be tight, I guess is what I would say. And so I think in our bylaws is that if we can complete that, like I'm trying to think of how we make this decision according to our bylaws, and off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that it would then go to exec if they could meet to make that decision and see if that group gets to consensus.
Adam, I have
Well, it's a
an
double check.
alternative thought
Okay.
that I just wanted to float out there because I feel like the conversation is getting at a completely different issue, which I think is actually a more important issue than whether or not acupuncture should be available as an alternative to a lack of child psychiatry resources. It's almost like we're answering the wrong question. And I think the way, Annette, that you phrased it is this is a much bigger, broader issue. Do we take the opportunity to send the HERC not as a response to this reaction, but to send the HERC a well thought out letter about the broader overall concern about all of the alternative therapies and things that are not equitably available to people, so that we're not responding to the Acupuncture Society's letter. We're responding to the broader issue of concern and take some time for the DEI committee to really dig in on a GARE analysis of the totality of the issue as opposed to just this one little thread. Because I think if we shoot our shot at this and we do it just in response to acupuncture as a way to increase access to child psychiatry, we're missing the boat on what could be a much bigger shot. Just a thought. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean anything's possible, right? There's more.
It
to
also solves the time problem because then we could actually.
Well, yeah, we missed the opportunity to comment on this specific piece, right? We would miss the opportunity to comment on acupuncture, but we could take a broader, more direct statement about the need overall. Yes, Alicia.
I just want to make it very clear that that is exactly what I've been saying the entire time from the beginning of this conversation, including the emails that I've been writing. So I just want to make that very, very clear here that that was the initial ask from me, that we make it not around acupuncture itself, but that acupuncture is part of, right? Like we utilize this piece here as the starting conversation for equitable access to care for every youth in this state. That is what I asked for. That was my initial request. All the way back whenever I emailed this, or whenever I wrote this email to the beginning of this conversation, I'm just going to stop there. So whatever it is that we decide to do, that was my ask.
Okay. So we've got a request for the GARE tool to be completed around the acupuncture discussion. That the timeline on that is tight. We can do our best. Or if folks would like to clearly, I just want to be clear that we would miss the opportunity to comment on the HERC discussion around acupuncture and formulate a letter to HERC that is more broadly related to the need for access to child psychiatry. Is that then the preferred approach?
What I hear Robin saying that Alicia kicked it off with is, and I'm bringing it back to Annette too, is like maybe instead of responding to what, everything's going on with HERC, we have all the other people responding. Maybe what we can do as SOCAC is take our time, do the race equity worksheet, and look at alternative treatments more broadly, more therapeutically, more like really look at it and then weigh in at that point. So we missed this opportunity, quote unquote, because the HERC has heard from folks. And maybe we wait and do a more holistic view of all alternative treatments and make sure we do the race equity worksheet. I mean, I don't mind a slow roll. I feel like we've all got a lot on our plates, and I do want to be careful about this because, this conversation has gotten really big because I think I feel a consensus around we don't want there to be denials, but we also don't want there to be disproportionate access to certain care, and wanting to be careful. So I just throw out we punt this and we look at expanding coverage for alternative treatments as to look at barriers to care. That would be my idea. / Alicia's.
Yeah. Kati, go ahead.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thank you. I support what Emily is saying and really think the conversation needs to be decoupled from the HERC because they do a very specific thing and serve a very specific role and function. And we are talking about something that is way beyond like their little niche in the process, right? So I think it would be good to do that and then really think about what are the entry points and the I don't know. Sorry, my metaphor brain is shut down for the afternoon. Like there's doors that are locked and there's doors that are unlocked and there's doors that are ajar, right? So we want to look for the doors that are ajar for kind of entering into that conversation at the right level about how you ensure that, because this is going to be the balance, I think, that public dollars are supporting treatments that aren't harmful and are effective, and that community and client and consumer experience and desire is included in that consideration process, right? It's those kind of two things. And I don't think the HERC is the door to try to go through with that kind of conversation. I think it's much bigger.
Zafir. And then I'll recap what I think maybe I've heard.
Would it be possible to do both? I know that that's more work, but if we hit the deadline, like with what Kyle Johnson was saying in the chat, which is like a basic comment of like access to acupuncture should not be replacement for access to psychiatric or psychological care, and then have also that bigger, like more like thought out long-term letter as well, because I feel like both are important. And I feel like it also allows us more time to get that bigger, broader letter done while still being involved in the current conversation. So it's not just like we're standing aside, like biding our time. It's I don't know.
Okay. So right now, we've still got a motion that is outstanding that I think we would need to have withdrawn if we were to then look at a different motion. Because right now we've got one pending that has to go to GARE tool. and I'm forgetting even the language of the first one that went through. Um, Anybody happen to be taking solid notes there?
I think it'd be something like the council will submit a public comment to the HERC around inclusion of acupuncture benefit for mental health diagnoses.
So I'm trying to track here. Who made the initial?
I believe I did.
Okay.
A lot of that is the language that's in the chat, when it comes down to it. So hopefully that helps. I think Kyle had put that up. Yeah.
So I think we're just checking to make sure, Anderson, that we're like withdrawing your proposal because it was a specific motion. And if we want to change the motion, we make a new motion. So we're all clear on what we're voting on.
I'm not caught, but like even with hearing that of what the process needs to be to do that, if that needs to happen, and then we're filling out the form with our lens with the Garrett tool, if that's what needs to happen, yes.
And you're good on that? Okay.
100%.
Is that sufficient for you, Chair Rodakowski?
So I'm going to make a statement then that my understanding is that Anderson is withdrawing his motion that was previously made. Is that my understanding?
Thumbs up your understanding.
Yes.
Okay. So then does someone have a new motion to propose for the consensus model? And is that essentially what Dr. Johnson put in the chat that, quote, access to acupuncture should not be a replacement for access to psychiatric and or psychologic care?
I was thinking that could be a good statement to make, given the time constraint that we need to get something to them by a certain date coming up relatively soon. If there's consensus on that statement, we're not weighing in on whether acupuncture should be made available. It's just that it shouldn't be a replacement.
I don't think we have to get them anything. I mean, I don't think
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
under any obligation to make any statement at all to HERC on this.
Correct, Dan, we don't.
The
Alicia.
question is, it would be more powerful to make a statement versus not make a statement, more influential, or
I think it'd be more powerful to make a statement and then come back with the big thing, and then it's a 1-2 punch.
yeah, that's what I was
Versus,
thinking too.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
See, Alicia has her hand up.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's having a statement by SOCAC is going to be a lot more powerful than a couple of us individual folks going there, especially when, you know, those of us with lived experience. Because no matter how effective our voice, you know, those of us with lived experiences, going into a room full of professionals, particularly medical professionals, is not necessarily does not necessarily always go over well. So having the SOCAG, you know, make a statement is a lot more powerful. And I like the idea that Safir brought up, that, you know, making a statement and then coming back with kind of a wider and more broad conversation or information, I think would be really great. And I want to again be very clear. I think one of the issues that we've been running into is that our conversation is really coupled with the SOC letter, and the SOC letter is the thing that ties acupuncture as a replacement to psychiatric care. But a HERC review itself only talks about expanding acupuncture or access to acupuncture. So it's not necessarily saying that it's a replacement, right? So I think that is what, again, I think Kyle was saying, is that if we, right, making that distinction, that acupuncture should not be a replacement to psychiatric care, I think that would be a good statement to make, or helpful statement, I think.
Now I see in the chat that you got to go because you got to.
Yeah, I've got to get a phone call from a pediatrician probably. All right. Well, this was a great discussion. Thank you.
Al has to go be a child psychiatrist because we need more of them. So he does it remote for folks across the state on the Opal K line, which is one of the many great things that OHSU child psychiatry does. So I'm looking for the language of emotion that somebody
I
would
would
put forward.
I would make a motion if I knew how to.
You just say, I make a motion and then say the words, my friend.
Oh God, for real? Okay, it's like a spell. All right. I make a motion that we make a statement and then come back with the bigger later.
What is the language of the statement you would like to
The language of the statement is exactly what Kyle Johnson said. Access to acupuncture should not be a replacement for access to psychiatric and or psychological care.
Okay, we have a motion that the
Second, which puts it on the floor. There you go.
From Dr. Anderson. Do we have consensus before making any decisions? What are again, the 4 questions? What are the racial equity impacts of this particular decision? Who will benefit from or be burdened by this particular decision? Are there strategies to mitigate any unintended consequences? And is completion of the full racial equity worksheet warranted? Do folks have thoughts, concerns, or statements about those related to our current motion? Hearing none. Let's do a quick count of members. Do we even have quorum at this point? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay. So we're doing okay there. Anyone want to block? Does anyone want to stand aside? I am going to stand aside. I think that statement actually could do harm, related to kind of Alicia's argument about supporting parents at getting access. I think our current statement, that statement actually could cause harm for it to be approved. So I'm just going to stand aside. Am I seeing that Andrew is standing aside? Any
Yeah.
comment?
Well, I just feel like it's been a little bit convoluted, the conversation, and I'm not feeling really clear or confident in this vote, but I don't think it's something that I want to block, so I'm just going to stand aside.
Okay, Andrew Grover standing aside. Annette Magicotami, are you also standing aside?
Yeah, standing aside for the reasons I previously mentioned.
Thank you. Dr. Robin Henderson, are you standing aside?
Yes, I am standing aside. I just don't think this is something. We have a lot of things to do, and this wasn't in my bingo card today. And I'm concerned about staff resources, so I'm going to stand aside.
Noted. Dan Toma standing aside. Any comment?
Yeah, I'm hearing that I'm very much not alone in standing aside. And it looks like we've got probably a good half the council lined up to stand aside. I'm inclined to go back and block. We do not seem to be united on this. We don't seem to have a clear rationale. And I agree with Adam that while I agree with the content of the statement, I think that the statement could create impressions that it's not intended to create, as in that we're opposed to it. And I think we're not opposed to it. We're all over the map on it.
And so are you then standing aside or are you blocking? I caught both there, I think.
Well, yeah, because I'll go ahead and block.
Okay. The motion is not carried forward. Okay. Then, and thank you for the notes on Robin's rules, or Robert's rules. Maybe they're Robin's rules now. I see that in the chat, Robin, about how there wasn't a second. Thanks for that. I've got my book here. I'll dust up on my notes. Anderson.
I just had a quick question. That vote originally would have also still included the GARE tool being filled out, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Um, but moving forward, I guess the question is, will there still be an investigation with the GARE tool to follow up later for that? Or I guess we need to figure out what next steps are, huh?
About specific to acupuncture?
Just to keep it all together, that it's not specifically about acupuncture. It's about access to care as a whole and being able to speak towards the need for specifically HERC to look at that as a whole, and being able to respond to that, and being able to use our GARE tool to be able to um, use that as a lens to shape out what that looks like. Um, I just, I really want to try and keep this from becoming a long, drawn out circular conversation that lasts in the dead zone of so many subcommittees. I
So
do think more conversation needs to happen, absolutely. And like, what can we do to keep that from happening at the same time? Or maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, so I think this piece is done now because it's been blocked. So there's nothing happening there. The discussion about access to child psychiatry, and now I'm seeing comment about expanding alternative treatments. I think we as a council can have a robust discussion about increasing access to child psychiatry if that's what we want to have. And I'm hearing that, I think I'm hearing that from you, Anderson, is that like that's the discussion that you want to have, is how to increase access to child psychiatry and all other treatments for young folks.
Yes, I mean that from the beginning was the points, right? That there's more increased complementary services that could be like that families could be able to get. At least getting to the direction of that, even if doing more research, in the meantime is needed to be able to get there. But yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like we have a topic to put on our June main meeting agenda, is what I would say then, to discuss that further. Anna, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that for me feels like a strategic planning sort of thread, right? It's sort of like, what does access to care look like? What's our role in promoting and advocating for that? And what does access to alternative treatments look like? And what role does the SOCAC want to play in that? I think the GARE tool plays into that, right? Like who's getting access to alternative treatments? How do they get access? Is it a fair access, right? That to me sounds like a potential for a strategic, like what is that some of those strategies that we want to put, because that's the consensus that I heard today was everybody wants increased access to care and everybody wants equitable access to both standard or traditional evidence-based practices and alternative treatments. And so, how we go about putting those strategies together actually for me feels like part of our strategic plan. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it in June. Maybe that's what our strategic planning conversation is in June. Maybe we tie it all together and it's the same thing. But as before you said that, Adam, put it on the agenda for June, I was thinking, oh, this feels a lot like a strategic planning conversation.
I think it could be both. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So I don't know then that is specific to I don't know that we're doing a GARE tool on that right now.
I mean, I honestly don't know that we have a real that to do a GARE tool on at this point. We've had various ideas about what we want to say and support, and I think I agree with Anna that this should be put, access to treatment, psychiatry, and alternative/complementary should be a subject in our strategic plan that we can take on a little bit more thoughtfully.
I mean, it should probably be page 1 because we're last in access to care, right? Or
Yeah.
between 49th and 51st, depending on which review you look at. So yes, I think that should be front and center for sure. So we are not. So Zafir, we're not going to make a statement on acupuncture at all. HERC is meeting on the 15th. They'll make their decision. And then, so yeah, so we will not be making a comment on that. Okay. With that, I'm going to close the discussion on that. And I think we can close that barrier form. Christy. Annette.
Wait,
I'm so. Go ahead.
we're okay. So I'm confused. So we're closing the barrier because why?
So the
or just the discussion like right now.
The barrier form was about acupuncture, correct, Christy?
The barrier was about access to psychiatry. We are already working on kind of a final letter in response. So we will summarize. I've already told Tri-County that, hey, this is happening. If you all want to go provide comment, go for it. So we will be finalizing a letter, providing it to Tri-County System of Care, and then taking a vote at SAS on whether or not this barrier's been addressed.
Okay.
With consent from the regional county or the regional system.
Okay. Annette.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
We got to figure out who's given who what topics on these agendas because, like, go ahead and do the housekeeping.
All right. Our housekeeping, then we're going to move to closing. We have a couple of housekeeping announcements, so I'm going to turn to our SOCAC staff to give those announcements.
Thanks, Annette. We have a Drug Endangered Children Portland Academy coming up on June 10th and 11th. I will put the link for registration for that in the chat. It is at the Embassy Suites by Hilton in downtown Portland. Here's the details in the chat if you want to attend. Apparently that is too much for the chat.
I'm getting a little feedback in that.
I'm gonna mute her. Oh, we muted her and she unmuted at the same time. Okay, so let's see. I need to take out 2 characters before it will let me share. Can you let me share now? All right. I'm sorry. It's not working. So there's a hotel room. If you want to book a hotel room, you are welcome to do so. You can reach out to me for the information. There's it is a cross system training on how to better engage with children who are impacted by drugs, looking primarily at the harms that kids experience. If you want more information, please let me know. This was originally assigned to the SOCAC, and we have generously had this covered by the Association of Oregon Community Mental Health Programs and OHA's Substance Use Division. They're scheduling it. The next update is our strategic planning retreat. We'll be in person July 28th and 29th. And we will be meeting in Salem for those days. Those of you who want to stay over, we have a room block. It is at the Grand Hotel. We have 20 deluxe king rooms held for the nights of 7/27, 28, and 29. That comes with free on-site underground parking, a complimentary hot breakfast buffet, an indoor pool, hot tub, and fitness center. And we have to use the word SOCAC to receive the group rate. You need to call them directly. Those rooms need to be booked before June 27th if you want the special SOCAC room rate. And you can reach out to Corinna for information about travel reimbursement if you need gas coverage, hotel coverage, whatever. We do have funds to cover this. So if it's going to make it easy for you to show up and participate, please do take advantage of that. We are hoping that y'all will spend some good quality downtime with one another in the evenings. And so staying in the hotel will make that a lot easier. Questions about strategic planning retreat hotel information? Please, please, please make sure those dates are blocked on your calendar. July 28th and 29th, we need you. And then ongoing public meeting law training, reminders that public meeting law liability is on the individual council member, not on the council as a body. So if you violate public meeting law, that is a risk for you. We have talked about having the Oregon Government Ethics Commission come and provide us a training subject specific to the SOCAC, and we will be doing that in the fall, but there are free trainings happening all the time. It is attached to every calendar appointment for every subcommittee for the past few months, so you should have access to information on that. Again, if you have questions, talk to Corinna. She's the one who's really taking the lead on making sure all of our council members and subcommittee members are clear on what public meeting law requires. And finally, we are moving to the new SOCAC meeting time and structure that we have discussed before. Starting in September 2025, you should have new calendar invitations. Starting in September, it is 2 2-hour meetings a month. One will be primarily the sit and get portion of the meeting where we receive reports and information. The other will be the discuss and decide portion of the meeting. We will record the sit and get part so folks who can't make it to that first half can watch it and come well prepared for the second half where the discussion and decision making is happening. The reason for that is to accommodate more of our youth and family members who said that this 4-hour time block was impossible for them to attend the full time. So please check your calendars, make sure that you see those invitations and that you're trying to work with those of you who have really busy schedules to move things around so you can continue to attend the meetings. And that's all I have.
That's all we have, folks. So thank you for the time and participation today. I appreciate everybody leaning into some pretty in-depth discussions and being able to have those openly together. And our next meeting is June 3rd, 12:30 to 4:30. I'll see y'all, I'm sure, before then. But take care, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.